Infinite Dental Technologies provides incredible imaging at an affordable price. Their newest products include the RayScan 3D CBCT Alpha Plus 80, as well as the Alpha Plus 120, which provides varying fields of view. Both of these units have the same great qualities of the Alpha Plus 160, including wireless remote control, blue infinite field view that projects into the patient's face for 3D scans, and the 70 voxel size images in endo mode. Both new Alpha Plus units are upgradable to the 16x10 field of view at any time without replacing the entire unit with a quick software upgrade. Pricing for all of their 3D CBCTs includes installation, on-site applications and training, and unlimited viewer licenses for your computers. There's no monthly fees, no yearly fees, and all software updates during your warranty period is free of charge. A 5-year full parts warranty and a 10-year CT detector and X-ray generator warranty are all standard with your new unit. Ray Face is the newest product to the Ray America line. This product, in conjunction with your CBCT, can assist doctors in creating a virtual patient. Ray Face shoots simultaneously from multiple angles to reconstruct a patient's natural smile into a high-quality 3D data. Ray Face retails for $18K, but for the cost for Nifty members, it's only $15K. For these 3 products, please reach out to our Midwest Territory business specialist, Christian Petrino, at 630-805-0278, or visit our website at www.infinitedentaltech.com. Go ahead and schedule a 30-minute remote demo so you can see what RayScan is all about. Infinite Dental Technologies, imaging reimagined. Welcome to the Nifty Thrifty Dentist Spring Virtual Summit. As many of you know, I started doing these virtual summits because of what was going on in our world because of COVID. Not too many meetings were going on. We still needed to level up. We still needed to learn. And that's why we started doing these virtual summits. Now, the one in the fall was super popular. We got so many views and so many people taking advantage of the CE that we decided to do another event. So welcome. We have some amazing speakers. But before we go any further, this would not be possible without our amazing sponsors. So I wanted to take some time and give them a shout out. So we have Infinite Dental Technology. We know about them with Brandon Bomar. Kettenbach is a sponsor. Dental Stores, Simplastics, Preview Software, MVP Mailhouse, United Medical Credit, Mango Voice, Bird Eye, Crazy Dental, CareStack, Dental Re, Mouthwatch, and last but not least, Dark Horse Tech. So I wanted to give a shout out to all our sponsors. Thank you guys for making this possible. And also thank you for your continued support to the Nifty Thrifty Dentist community. So what's going on in this virtual summit? Well, we have amazing speakers that will be talking about business, that will be talking about clinical, and also leadership and mindset. This event is for everyone, and everyone can earn CE. So for a really small fee, if you click the link that's in the post, you can go to our landing page and you can sign up for the CE. It's $99 for up to 10 hours of CE. So if you need that CE, go ahead and sign up for it. But you know what? This event is for free for all of us to watch. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, the keynote speaker of our event. We have 2 keynotes. We have one on the first day and another one on the second day. The first keynote speaker is Dr. Shawn Dill. Dr. Shawn Dill is a 1995 graduate of Logan College of Chiropractic. For 8 years, Dr. Dill practiced in the country of Costa Rica, where he established what many consider to be the largest upper cervical practice in the world. And he authored the law that regulates the practice of chiropractic in that country. Since returning to the United States, Dr. Dill has become a noted authority in the chiropractic world, as well as consulting on marketing, sales, and entrepreneur strategies for service professionals. He is the CEO of the Specific Chiropractic Center, a franchise which operates multiple clinics across the United States. He's also the founder of the Black Diamond Club, a community of service providers from all over the world looking to reach more people, make a bigger impact, and live the lifestyle that they deserve. We are so glad to have Dr. Dill as one of our keynote speakers.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Dr. Shawn Dill here, and I'm super excited to be sharing with you today. I want to thank Dr. Glenn Vo and all of you at Nifty Thrifty Dentists who have plugged in here and are watching this presentation. Hopefully, we will be able to provide you some massive value and some insights that will help you tremendously to reach more people, make a bigger impact, and also, of course, to create the lifestyle that you deserve. Now, I also want to start out by saying, look, I know that you don't know who I am, and I'm going to introduce myself, but I also want to begin by just saying that, look, what I found in my life is that all great advice tends to be counterintuitive. Why? Well, because if it was intuitive, you would be doing it already, and we're not here just to create something that reiterates everything that you already know that's gotten you to where you already are. So today I'm going to challenge your thinking just a little bit, not too much, but just a little bit to see if we can help you to grow. My name is Dr. Shawn Dill, and along with my wife, Dr. Lacey Book, we have managed to build ourselves a pretty decent business empire. I am a chiropractor by profession, by degree. I studied chiropractic. My wife is also a chiropractor. So you're like, wait a minute, what are you doing here on this dental program? You know, Shawn, most of us are dentists, right? But here's another thing that I've learned is that a lot of these things that have made us successful were taken from other industries. And I hope that today we'll be able to share with you some tips of what has made us successful and that you will apply them into your own life. Being a chiropractor by trade, we run a franchise that you see there, the Specific Chiropractic Centers. So we've managed to take one successful office and scale that into a full franchise with offices across the entire United States. We also have created what's called the Black Diamond Club, which is the consulting arm of what we do. Now, we have over 600 providers. Not all of them are chiropractors. In fact, we have dentists in there, digital marketers there. We have medical doctors, cardiologists, a whole host of service providers who come together to help each other to embrace the concepts of marketing, sales, and mindset. And then we have some periphery other businesses that we own. Chiro Sushi, it's a chiropractic media company. Katana is an EHR, a full service EHR. We call it a patient relationship platform. It helps us to integrate all of our marketing and sales services into our EHR. And then the $1 Billion Mission, which led to our very first ClickFunnels 2 Comma Award. So yeah, I understand the digital marketing side. In fact, we actually just acquired a digital marketing agency, and we're super excited to be working in that realm as well. The 2 Comma Award for creating a funnel that would help to drive leads into healthcare providers' offices was something that we're very proud of, and it is the result of a partnership that we were able to create with two very accomplished e-commerce experts, both Trey and Bryce Llewellyn. Now, we also are the authors of a Amazon best-selling book, None of Your Business, which is a winning approach to turn service providers into entrepreneurs. And I strongly encourage you to pick up a copy of the book. It is a fantastic book that is a culmination of over 20 years of experience learning and mentorship. So it's not just observations, but it's also mentorship that we have gained along the way. And to wrap up this section, if you'd like a free copy of the book, go to www.blackdiamondclub.com/free book, and we'll be happy to get a copy of the book sent out to you for just the price of shipping and handling. I hope that sort of gives you an orientation into who I am and why maybe Dr. Vo invited me to share with you. I'm going to be talking about the changes that have occurred over the past year and how that has shaped the way that we do business, how that shapes the way we market, how that shapes the way we sell, potentially even how it shapes the way we think, but definitely how it shapes the way the rest of the world thinks. Of course, as I said earlier, the goal here is to help you to discover some strategies that you can put into place so that we can reach more people. And I think that, look, every single one of us wants to reach more people, whether it's on the lead side of things, just more reach, or even converting them and having more of them come into your brick and mortar. Or look, maybe even some of you are in the online space now, especially after a year of maybe contemplation and considering sort of where we are in business, have maybe moved into that online space, how to reach more people, how to make a bigger impact. So we're going to talk about how to grow your impact beyond just the core thing that you do. And then also, of course, we have to monetize it in order for it to be a true success, because we're, of course, being service providers, we want to help people, but also on the business side, I want to see you succeed financially as well. So, man, things certainly have changed over this last year. Let's take a look. I have a picture in the height of the pandemic here, Las Vegas. I mean, this is not like some Las Vegas, the city that never sleeps. This is not just a picture like, before it was built or something of that nature. This is actually Las Vegas during the pandemic. And, we have here Times Square during the pandemic. And man, things have really, really changed. What was once true as far as marketing, sales, and even on the service side, practice management has had to adapt and evolve. And one of the things that I was saying even pre the pandemic, and I say pre-pandemic, luckily for us, we manage a lot of information. And so we are privy to a lot of data, and I'm going to talk just briefly about that. But the data began to show that this was a big deal. This was a big thing. And so we began to alert our members back in February of last year that this was going to be a really big deal. And of course, there was a percentage of them, and it was not a small percentage, not a minority percentage. It was a pretty big percentage of people who thought I was absolutely nuts. Like, what are you talking about? This is not a big deal. It's just like a flu. It's just going to pass. Well, here we are a year later. And also during that time, and I'm sure just like many of you, a lot of people have been reporting record years. So we've seen times that were very thin for some people. Some people really struggled. And my heart goes out to you, and I hope that in today's discussion we can give you some ideas to reverse that trend. Other people, they were able to adapt. And that's a key component to any business, is your ability to adapt. And so through that phase of adapting, a lot of people are reporting record years. Like, what do you mean? And I get it. I know, probably in the space that we're dealing with today, probably difficult to actually have a record year if we were just strictly managing our brick and mortar and we were faced with limitations relative to volume, relative to the way that we were able to transact business, etc. And so we are going to be taking a look at some things that have changed, how society and how your community's mindset has shifted relative to marketing, relative to purchasing decisions, etc. A lot of this information comes from my very good friend, Philip Stutz, and I really highly recommend that you check out their website over at Win Big Media. They've been on top of sharing data, and we work with them as a client. I think that their data is second to none. This idea of understanding the U.S. consumer sentiment, I don't know if people are watching us from outside of the United States, but the data that they've been gathering is relative to the consumer sentiment during this process of the pandemic, and how the data is shifting and how consumers are making decisions. And look, frankly, I think that this is absolutely critical, that we are contemplating these things as we are making decisions relative to our business. I think everybody would love to grow. Everybody would love to see more people and make more money. But the choices, right? So before, the marketing sentiment that we would be able to utilize in previous years has shifted. And I think the key here is understanding how the market is thinking. And so again, I just want to reiterate, I'm just the messenger. I'm not giving you my opinion about how the market is thinking. This is based off of extensive research that has been done by Win Big Media. And again, I want to encourage you to check them out because the data will help you to win. So here's what Win Big Media is telling us. There are three main areas of spending that are occurring. Now, I want to respect and honor everybody's differing viewpoints and worldviews here. Some people may say, look, that's not what I'm seeing. And I understand that, but I also I want you to understand that we all have different worldviews. We all have different political views. And I want to be respectful of that as well. So being as generic as possible, what happened during the pandemic is people's priorities shifted. Now, what I'm also understanding is that some of you are saying, look, Shawn, the economy is at an all-time high. And based off of most economic indicators, that's true. There are other economic indicators that are somewhat scary that may indicate that we are on the verge of a recession. Now, whether you choose to look at those or you choose to look at the others, I mean, it's a tumultuous time right now to really have any degree of predictability. Now, even though the economy appears to be on the rebound and money is flooding back into the economy, in large part because of stimulus money that's coming into the population here in the United States, people are then beginning to return back into the market and they're spending in three key areas. And I think this is super important for you to have in mind and understand. Number one is helping others. People are interested in helping others. And I want to give you some examples here in a second on how you might be able to speak into this category. The second place that they're looking to spend is in safety. They are cognizant of safety measures. You're seeing even these campaigns, you know, they have these stickers, this place is safe. You see the airlines doing an awful lot, spending an awful lot of money in communicating safety to their patrons as people begin to consider returning to travel, returning to air flight. And trust. Trust has become a very big factor as people have begun to move. And again, I was one of the first, I believe, at least in this space, in the entrepreneurial space, to predict that the coming out of the pandemic, it was in August of last year, that I began to speak about how people were going to begin to announce. You were going to see this on social media. You were going to hear this in your offices. As your clients came to see you, they were going to begin to use words like, I just don't know what to think. And I want you to understand the power of that. When someone does not know what to think, well, this is an indication that they've lost trust in authority, right? They just don't know what to think. They don't know what to do. They're seeing so much conflicting information. Now, you may think that this only affects certain areas relative to the pandemic. You may hear me say, I don't know what to think. And you may be thinking, right, with regards to masking or not masking, with regards to getting the vaccine or not getting the vaccine, with regards to politics. But in reality, when people's consciousness shifts and they no longer know what to think, well, now they don't know what to think about, you know, their normal healthcare routines. They don't know what to think about the businesses that they're currently conducting business with. What I was saying was, in the beginning of this, I said this was going to be a great reset. The pandemic indeed caused a great reset. Everybody, because we were forced into our homes for large part, was forced to reevaluate every single relationship that they had. Now, this could be good news or it could be bad news. For a lot of you, the good news is that maybe you were going into the pandemic. Maybe you were third or fourth in your community on the list of the top 10, right? Now, the good news is that even the people that were in the first place, I've said, maybe there are individuals in your community who have been there, have been stalwarts of your community for 30, 40, 50 plus years. And you've thought to yourself, like, I hope that they retire because nobody's going to move them off of that position. Well, the pandemic has caused the public's thinking to reevaluate that loyalty. Look, if you are in the second or third or fourth or even the fifth position, coming into this, or even if you are brand new to your community offering your service, these are unprecedented times, because that loyalty that existed because of a long 20 plus year run has now been cracked, not because of anything that they did, but because of the pandemic, because of the separation. Any great relationship depends on consistency. And so because of that separation, people were forced to reevaluate their commitments, their loyalties, and their relationships that they've established over time. They reconsidered their loyalty to certain restaurants. They reconsidered their loyalty to their gym, to their fitness regimens. They reconsidered their loyalty to their massage therapist, their chiropractor, and their dentist. They were forced to reconsider these things as they were at home, as they were receiving calls, canceling appointments, and causing them to necessarily take pause. As they reemerge, they are going to remake decisions. Now, I know it would be the most convenient if they would just go back to their normal routines. But there was something that was driven into people's minds as well, and that was this idea of the new normal. Now, the new normal could be seen as a negative, like, hey, do you mean that we're going to wear masks for the rest of our lives? That some people would say that would be a negative new normal. But the new normal could be a positive, where maybe their loyalties, alliances shifted, and now they are beginning to make wiser choices, which may include doing business with you. So let's take a look at how we would apply these three key areas. So in number one, helping others. Well, I think that you need to adopt a mindset of literally putting your community on its back. Here's what I know. Whatever situation you may be in, and maybe you're feeling like, look, my situation is very difficult, right? But there are others in your community who are equally, if not more, affected. Someone, and why not you, needs to step out and lead your community. You're going to see that when we look at these ideas of helping others, safety, and trust, it just comes down to leadership. Your community is looking for a leader. Now, you may think, well, that's the mayor, that's the city council, that's some politician. But in reality, this is an opportunity again for you to step out and lead from within. And I'm not talking from a political sense. I'm talking from just making sure that your community survives. This, for some of you, you've been in your communities for years. So you've been there, and the community's probably given a lot to you. Maybe even you've been there your whole life. Maybe you went to high school at the local high school, and maybe you met your relationship, your wife or your husband, your spouse there locally. Maybe you've been in business there for many years, and the community has supported you through your triumphs and also your defeats. Maybe your children have gone to school in your community, and maybe they've been a part of the local, whether it's the arts and music, band, choir, sports. Maybe they played baseball or football, or they played ballet or lacrosse. But the community's been there for you, and this is your opportunity to ensure that the community is there for years and years to come. So what we suggest is that you run what we call a benevolence campaign. So in the benevolence campaign, what we're suggesting is that you begin to engage your community to come back out of their homes and to spend money locally. One of the things that we saw here is that in this pandemic, a lot of money began to go into e-commerce, right? It became more convenient. The big winner of the pandemic was Amazon, because you were not able to go out, and so it became easy to just order things online and have them delivered to your doorstep. So Amazon was the big winner, but this was at the detriment of any of the retail in your local community, and not the big box stores, but the smaller local retail stores. And so what we suggested to our members way back in February of 2020 was to begin to open on a weekly basis. Yes, weekly basis, consistency is key. To go out into your community, and just basically the way that it works is you find a place and you open up a $100 tab. You bring in a $100 bill, And look, I'm going to talk to you if you're like, I don't have $100. But if you have $100, we're going to open up a $100 tab, let's say at the local donut store or the local coffee shop or whatever the place is that we're trying to revitalize. And we're doing this because it's a restaurant. We're doing this on a weekly basis. Not the same business, but we're shifting it on a weekly basis. And I'm going to shoot a video. So we're going to leverage social media to rally. This will be important later, to rally the community. Very important that you have a strong social media game and not a platform. Not talking about using your social media as a platform to project your worldviews. I've never seen that be productive, by the way. I've never seen an engagement where, the anti-vaxxer convinced the vaccine person to repent and now they're not getting the second dose, or vice versa. I've never even seen that operate or work that way. But social media is a great tool for us to rally, to share and rally our community, regardless of their worldview, regardless of their political stance. And to say something like, look, I've just opened up a $100 tab here at James Coffee Spot. And I want to invite all of you here in Carmel, Indiana. I want to invite all of you to come down to James Coffee Spot. And look, if the pandemic has hit you hard, I want to buy you a cup of coffee on me. Now, if you are in a position where you can afford to, I would like you to come down to James Coffee Spot. I'll still buy you a cup of coffee, but why don't you add on a sandwich or add some more of these great things that they have here at the coffee spot. And if you have been exceptionally blessed, I still would love for you to come down and support James Coffee Spot today, because here, today, we are all about rallying the coffee spot. My name is Dr. Shawn Dill from the Specific Chiropractic Centers here in Carmel, Indiana, and I appreciate your support. That's what I just shoot that video. This took probably about a minute. I'm going to post that onto my company, onto my business page. I'm going to also post that onto my public facing my public brand, right? My personal brand page, and I'm going to boost those. So if you're not yet a student of this boosting $1 a day strategy, I encourage you to look that up or reach out to me and I can get you some information on that. $1 a day, boosting that for 7 days, and that's going to create a great market penetration for you. And then I'm going to repeat that on a weekly basis. Now, what if I don't have $100? Well, we also teach, and we're going to have some slides on this in a second, but we teach this concept of then rallying your community and creating what we call the Gang of Five. I am a student of Michael Port, author of the New York Times best-selling book, Book Yourself Solid. Strongly encourage you to check that out. It's the second best business book that you could possibly read after None of Your Business. And in that book, there's a discussion on this concept of the Gang of Five. The Gang of Five is simply 4 other individuals, so you and 4 other individuals, all of whom provide a different business or service to the same target market. One of the things that you'll notice that your clients probably go to, say, a chiropractor. Now, that chiropractor down the street is servicing the same people. You're just servicing them in a different way. It's the same population of people, because of a lot of reasons. Maybe because of the way you market, because of the way that your clinics look, because of your price pointing, and because it's the same people. They keep referring each other. You should go to my dentist, you should go to my chiropractor, and then maybe there's a massage therapist or a hair salon that's also servicing them, or a nail salon that's also servicing them. But not just services. Maybe they all like a certain restaurant. Maybe they all go to James Coffee Spot. So by pulling together, we can get a lot of leverage. What leverage does is it helps you to obtain your goal faster. I often say, I'm approaching 50 years old, and if I were to be in a foot race with my assistant, Luke, who's in his 20s, and we were to do a 1-mile run, who do you think would win? Well, obviously, Luke, who's very active, would beat me in the mile race. But what if I was on a bicycle? So if I was on a bicycle and he was running, well, of course, I would win. Well, we could level the field again and give us both a bicycle, and then who would win? Well, of course, again, because he's younger and better physical condition, Luke would win. Yeah, but what if I was in a car? Well, if he was on a bicycle and I was in a car, well, then I would win. You see, leverage allows you to get to your finish line, get to your goal faster. Oftentimes in the business that we do, leverage comes in the form of people. And so I'm encouraging you to find other small businesses. This is the best time to do this because people are all in the same boat. The Great Reset that happened. Nobody's like, well, I've been here for 25 years. I don't need your help. Yeah, but you've been closed, or you've been limited at least. For the past year, let's talk about rebuild, which is why I named this presentation Rebuild, because everybody got knocked down at least to some degree and is now looking to rebuild. So now leverage says, maybe I could take my gang of 5 and we could all just put in $20. But maybe if your gang of 5 is okay, we could all put in $100. And how impressive would that be if every single week I was out there in my community opening up a $500 tab? And then I was sharing that on social media, and I was then leveraging, so my other 4 gang of 5 members, they were sharing that on their social media page, and we were all boosting that post for $1 a day for 7 days. You would understand that the reach and the penetration would be absolutely tremendous. And this, my friends, is effective marketing during this time of COVID. Now, a lot of other big businesses are doing this. You saw Barstool Sports with Dave Portnoy. Create a fund. You get a lot of positive press by benevolence. Why? Because people are looking at one of their buying time criteria is helping others. They want to do business with those who are helping other people. And so I want to strongly encourage you to consider this as a marketing strategy. Now, I also want to point out that in my world, marketing doesn't get you new clients. It doesn't get you new patients. Marketing, what it does is it builds awareness. And it builds awareness of who you are and what you have to offer the world. And so marketing done in this benevolent way is a very, very good strategy. Let's talk about safety now. So in the safety box, we want to talk about what you are going to do to protect your community. People want to know, what protective measures do you have in place, regardless of your personal stance. So look, and again, I want to make sure that we clarify this. I'm not saying that maybe you are anti-mask. I don't know. Maybe, and so I'm not saying that you're going to post, I'm anti-mask or I'm anti-vaccine. However, I would ask, is there a market for dentists who marketed themselves for as someone who takes care of unvaccinated people? Again, and I'm not advocating for one way or another. I'm just saying, like, if we can get outside of the box here a little bit, and again, I do think your stance is important, but regardless of your personal stance, people want to know that they're protected. So I'm not even saying necessarily protected against the coronavirus, right? I'm saying that protection has become a buying time criteria. How protected am I? They're wondering, what precautions are you taking to make sure that I'm protected? Protected against what? Well, of course, probably number one is coronavirus, but then against a lot of other things. Are you protecting me against advice that might not be appropriate for my particular situation? Are you protecting me financially? Are you protecting me against maybe unscrupulous competitors, right? So how are you protecting? And we want to communicate this through your marketing. I highly recommend, again, video is a phenomenal medium for this, where you can begin to show your community your concern for their protection. Now, the next area that we want to dive into is trust. Right now, my friends, distrust is literally at an all-time high, right? People, again, just do not know what to think. So when information is presented to them, their initial inclination is to not believe it. This, again, my friends, is supported by research, and I encourage you to check out Win Big Media. Dive in, see what is going on in the minds of your leads, your prospects, and even your clients. So when you say something like, I recommend XYZ, I recommend teeth whitening, I recommend orthodontics, I recommend whatever it is that follows, the immediate reaction is going to be in their subconscious mind, I don't know if I trust this. So the question arises, how can you instill trust within your community? Well, I want you to understand that, one, helping others goes a long ways towards building trust. You begin to create trust within your community by becoming preeminent. Now, I've been working with Jay Abraham for, 4 or 5 years now as my personal coach and mentor. And that's one of his cornerstones is preeminence. Preeminence is when you become your community's most trusted advisor. And I want you to understand something, like, look, people's number one dominant thought when it comes to healthcare and anything healthcare is coronavirus. Like, even if I were to say, like, hey, what about your teeth? Well, coronavirus, right? If I were to say, what about your skin? You see a dermatologist? Well, coronavirus. And it's inevitable at this point. So one of the ways that you begin to build trust is to become preeminent. And one of the ways is to become, remember, preeminence means the community's most trusted advisor. And so one of the ways to become preeminent is to provide relevant information on various topics. Now, again, this might seem counterintuitive, and also this might be it might fly in the face of advice that you've received in the past. But this is post-coronavirus, or maybe tail-end coronavirus to post-coronavirus advice. The way that you become preeminent is to provide useful and relevant information to your community that they deem to be helpful for whatever it is that they're dealing with. Well, all of this discussion that we've had thus far, obviously, then hinges on you understanding very well and intimately your ideal client. And your ideal client, if you haven't seen a Google search of Lululemon and their ideal client, Ocean, I strongly encourage you to Google that, Lululemon and Ocean, so you can see what that looks like. So a lot of you might be like, I don't need an ideal client. My ideal client is anybody that has teeth. Like, okay, but that's not actually true. I've yet to find anybody who just has no ideal client. And so if we can get you to define your ideal client, then we could begin to have a deeper understanding of what are the things that they're dealing with. One of my favorite sort of marketing hacks also comes from my mentor, Jay Abraham, which is his Amazon School of Marketing. So if you kind of have a business that is attracting a certain demographic of people, and you would like to know more about them and how they think and what their struggles might be, you could simply post a whiteboard or a chalkboard or some way that they could actively share in your waiting area, and you would just change the question on the top. And maybe you would put, and I would start off with, what book are you currently reading, right? What book are you currently reading? And, and I would probably seed it. I'd write, none of your business. Don't write that because they'll be like, oh, that means none of your business. But I would put some books up there, right? That some titles that people might be reading. And then, because that will kind of open the door, and then other people will start writing. Two things will happen. One is your own clients will realize, like, wow, there's other people in here that are like me, and will maybe even take pictures of your board and get suggestions, reading list suggestions. But the other thing is that you're going to have compiled a pretty good list of the books that your clients are reading. Then what you do is you go on to Amazon and you're going to read the 5-star reviews and the 1-star reviews. Why? Because people are emotionally charged when they leave a positive review, and people are emotionally charged when they leave a negative review. But when we read their reviews, we're going to get some deeper insights into how they think. We're going to get deeper insights into the things that they like. We're going to get deeper insights into the things that frustrate them, the problems that they're trying to solve that obviously, in this case, if it was a negative review, were not solved by this particular book that they read. Then we can begin to utilize their own language in your marketing. So now you can stop having your marketing pieces just be you saying what you want them to hear. And now you have shifted and you've gained an incredible advantage because now you're using their lexicon, their language, and you're speaking to them and you're revealing to them what they want to hear. You're revealing to them solutions to problems that they have, even if that problem is not necessarily solved by the service that you provide. A great example of that is if I were a chiropractor and I was dealing with a lot of people that were coming into my office that had headaches, and I realized that part of what they were tracking down in their pursuit of a solution was maybe an oral appliance. I then would be smart to draw in an authority and introduce them into my group to solve this problem, because what that does is, one, obviously it helps to solve the problem, but two, it establishes me as preeminent. Why? Because I become the most trusted advisor. Not that I gave the answer, because maybe I didn't even have the answer, but preeminence is when people realize, like, look, I can go to you and you will shoot me straight. And most likely you will be able to find me a solution. So helping others goes a long way to building trust. So those are the 3 areas where we're going to focus on in our marketing and sales. Now, 5 phases of recovery, which is, well, how are we going to do this? So we have the 3 areas we're going to focus on. Well, how are we going to do it? We're going to engage, we're going to build community, we're going to inform, we're going to rally, and then we're going to rebuild. So this is a process. And I get it too. I understand a lot of you are like, listen, I don't have time for this process. Like, I need help now. Well, good news is that this isn't going to take that long to do. And in a lot of these things, this is not linear. I'm encouraging you to be engaged in all 5 areas, all 5 phases of recovery simultaneously. Frankly, if you would have been with me during the entire pandemic, my clients are already all in the rebuild phase, right? We've already done the first 4 phases of recovery. And if you're catching this now, it's not too late. Do not be discouraged. So let's dive in. Engage. Well, we teach in our book, None of Your Business, the marketing matrix. The way that we teach marketing is to create community, isolate them. I'm going to talk about what that means in a second. And then make sales offers proportionate to the amount of trust that you've earned into that isolated community. Then provide them with event-based opportunities to go even deeper with you, and then provide them with referral opportunities so that their business becomes exponential. So step number 1, engage. We want to create community, and we want to solve people's problems that go beyond just their oral health. We want to speak to them in the areas of their concern. We want to talk to them about helping other people, right? There's a great book called Pendulum. You can just look it up on Amazon. It is called Pendulum, that discusses how very, very cyclically in 40-year swings and pendular swings, our society globally shifts between this sort of me-oriented sort of philosophy into a we-oriented philosophy. Well, the peak of the last me society was 1983. That means the peak of the we society is 2023. This actually does explain the phenomenon of social media. Social media is so popular because we are actually concerned. We actually care about what other people are doing. I got to tell you, in 1983, when you had Michael Jackson and Madonna at the top of the music charts, and the whole thing was, we're living in a material world, you cared about yourself, and the idea was, how do I stand out the most, not how do I blend in the most. Well, now, because of the we swing, and we still, my friends, are waiting for the peak of this we society in 2023, community has become more and more important. You hear words like FOMO. Well, what does that mean? Fear of missing out. Fear of missing out on what? Of what everyone else is doing. It's not fear of missing out of what one person was doing. It's fear of missing out what everyone is doing. Look, if we're going to rebuild coming out of this situation, we need to be able to communicate effectively into your community that everybody is coming to see you when it comes to whatever the problem is that you are able to solve. And that's absolutely key. And the first step of that is that we're able to engage people by showing them that we can solve their problems. Next, we want to then, once we have the engagement, we want to build a community. I highly suggest that you create some sort of a VIP Facebook group. Now, not a page, but a group. I also am super cognizant of the fact that a lot of demographics are beginning to leave Facebook. So you may host this somewhere on, it could be an internet, an intranet type of situation where we're hosting them in some sort of online community. The idea is to build the community and isolate them. There has to be a place that they can go. And whether it's digitally or physically. So maybe you begin to host community events at your office place, in your brick and mortar. And I know, maybe you're like, well, due to restrictions. Well, as soon as restrictions allow, it would be appropriate for you to begin to host events. Why? Because people want to be around other people. They've been isolated for so long. I cannot tell you how effective this will be. If you specialize in kids, hosting somewhat like a kids day or a kids event, if you specialize with adults, even doing like cooking classes, Instapot classes, maybe even just having people come out on an evening for cocktail hour, whatever that is. Book clubs are extremely popular. In-person book clubs are extremely popular. That's a way that you build community. People are looking for a place where they can go and belong. Why? Again, because I talked about this book, Pendulum, the We Society, and they want to get plugged in. They're concerned about helping others. They're not playing an individual sport. They're trying to play a team game, and they want to get involved with and plugged in with other people who, in their minds, think, act, operate the same way they do, which again is why your ideal client is so important. Next, we need to inform them. Right, so the community is not just a group of people that are gathered around. They have to find something that they bond on. I want to just highlight again, I want to make sure that you understand, I'm not talking just about what you do. If you're a dentist, I'm not talking about just dentistry. I'm not talking about oral health only. I want you to inform them on all things, the other verticals that might be related to what it is that you do. And so you have to commit to provide them with valuable information. Things that they're like, my gosh, I can't believe that you give that away for free. Not valuable things, and not valuable services, valuable information. Share with them the tips and tricks that might help them to get ahead. What do you do in the eventuality that you cannot make it into the office for an extended period of time? How can I prolong my benefits? How can I work around if I am having a difficult time engaging? Because the reason why we would do this is because the magic is actually in working with you, and that's not lost on anybody. You provide a service. So yes, you telling me how I could, let's say you're a massage therapist and you're telling me tips on some pressure points that I could press with my own hands. Look, that's not nearly the same. That's not even in the same ballpark as actually going and receiving the service. Flossing daily or twice a day, I'm sure, is a practice that you all would advocate for. But that's not the same as going in and seeing a dentist, a doctor who can help me with any situation that I might be navigating. So the magic is in working with you. Information then is the bridge that helps your community instill trust in the information that you're providing so that they will take what we call the next logical step, which is to actually come in to see you. Well, we need to lead them there, and the way that we might do that, especially now, is to take advantage of this situation and rally the community. We've been saying to our members that you must lead your community out of the pandemic. You cannot wait, you cannot sit on the sidelines, you cannot expect someone else to lead them. You must lead them. But Shawn, what if I didn't have very much of a business and I'm relatively new? Right, this is your massive once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to step out. While the others, the veterans of the field, are still on the sidelines, you have the opportunity to step out and lead. And guess what? Once the community is following and they've stepped out and they've found their new routine after the pandemic with you as the leader, and then they are faced with whatever the problem is that you solve, well, the choice will be logical to them. You will be the logical choice. They will abandon their old loyalties and ties and relationships, and they will be using you as their preferred provider as you become preeminent, as you demonstrate to them that you are the leader and you have rallied the community back once again to preeminence as a whole. And then lastly, you begin to rebuild. Making sales offers proportionate to the amount of trust that you've earned might not mean pushing them right into a $25,000 program. It might mean making smaller offers to get them going. And this is where this whole idea of online telemedicine or teleconsults have come into play. Maybe there's certain courses that you've begun to offer as the world struggles with and navigates all kinds of new things that might be going on in their world. So maybe you have an online course that helps them to achieve a certain goal, a smaller goal relative to the bigger problem that you might solve. Maybe you have smaller levels of engagement. One of the things too that I've always said to my healthcare providers is, and you all fit this bill as well, is that what people are looking for, and more so now than ever, is access. Access is the commodity. Relationships are the commodity. No longer is the world, because we've been locked up, no longer are we just trying to chase the almighty dollar. People are also looking for closeness, relationships with people that they like and people that they trust. One of the things that's so difficult about the work that we do is that people then find you and engage with you. Hopefully, through the process, they like you. Typically, when they come to see you, there's a higher level of in-person engagement because there is work to be done. But then as the work is completed, then the engagement starts to become more distant. Of course, right? Wellness, maintenance, we recommend a continuance program. The difficulty in that, and I'm sure that this is something that all of us struggle with, is that the access is decreasing in a moment when they are attempting to increase access. Well, now's the time, my friends, as you begin to reset and step out, are there ways that even in your profession and even in the service and the business model, that you do and the service that you provide? Are there ways to create even increased levels of access, not just to the thing that you do, but to you as a person as they travel along? I got to tell you, the greater access, the greater the level of access, the higher the amount that you would be able to command for that. I mean, and I think that's not lost on any of you. If I'm going to see you and you're the primary doctor, I would expect to pay more to have you service me, regardless of what that is. Maybe even as a cleaning, and maybe some of you are like, cleanings, I don't do cleanings, right? But if you did, wouldn't you be able to command more than if an assistant were performing the exact same task? Why? Because access, because the relationship is with you. So the same thing goes once we get beyond that initial phase, if you will, of care and looking to provide greater levels of access. As we rebuild, we make sales offers proportionate to the amount of trust that we've earned. And so I'm suggesting maybe we might need to retool and create some lower level sales offers. I'm also suggesting that we might need to retool and create some higher level sales offers that might come along with even greater levels of access. And this, because we are in the rebuild phase, is the opportunity of a lifetime, an opportunity for you to reset and build an absolutely brilliant business model. Hopefully this stuff resonated with you. If you need help with that, I would be more than honored to help you to do that. Just reach out to us. You can reach me on all of the social media platforms. Typically my handle is @Dr. Shawn Dill, @Dr. Shawn Dill. I'd love to engage with you and help you out. And I want to conclude with recognition. You know, recognition feeds the soul. And I want to recognize and thank Dr. Glenn Vo and his amazing team for putting this on and for allowing me to be a part of this amazing event. It has been an absolute pleasure sharing with you. I look forward to hopefully seeing you in person someday. And like I said, I would love to have the opportunity to work with you. Check us out at the Black Diamond Club. I promise we'll make you feel right at home.
Kettenbach Dental, simply intelligent. 75 years Kettenbach. Kettenbach is internationally known for its extensive patents and product innovations. Elastomers, silicones, resins, temporary, core buildup, and cements. Highly acclaimed by leading third-party evaluators for clinical performance. Highly acclaimed by users by encouraging peers to incorporate Kettenbach products into practice. Fastest growing usage due to clinical performance at a low direct-to-practice cost. No middleman costs. Panasil, VPS impression material. Identium, VSXE impression material. Futar, bite registration. Silginate, alternate alginate. Visalis temporary restorative. Visalis core. Visalis SimCore. 2-in-1 core buildup, ADH cement. Airway metrics for use in OAT. "76 years of providing excellent dental materials. Improve clinic efficiency with affordable products. Kettenbach Dental Impression Materials and Restoratives. Visalis SimCore. Visalis Core. Visalis Temp. Mucoprin Soft. Identium. Panasil. Futar. Silginate. Available only direct from Kettenbach Dental. Call 877-532-2123. Order online www.kettenbachusa.com.
Our next speaker is Dr. Randolph Resnik. Dr. Randolph Resnik is a leading clinician, educator, researcher, and author in the field of prosthodontics and oral implantology. Dr. Resnik received his dental degree from the University of Pittsburgh, and upon graduation from dental school, he continued his training at the university and got a specialty degree in prosthodontics. Dr. Resnik then furthered his postgraduate education at the University of Pittsburgh by completing a fellowship in oral implantology, while also earning a master's degree for research on dental implants. He has spent the last 30 years working alongside Dr. Carl Misch, serving as the surgical director of the Misch International Implant Institute and chief of staff. During that time, Dr. Resnik has established himself as one of the world's experts in dental implant radiology, while also continuing to improve the educational protocols in implant dentistry through the Misch Institute. Along with his passion for lecturing and education, Dr. Resnik is also an accomplished author, having published numerous research articles across his career. His recent textbooks, Avoiding Complications in Oral Implantology and 4th edition of Contemporary Implant Dentistry, are bestsellers in our profession. Dr. Resnik's expertise is the basis for his insightful presentation today, simplifying bone augmentation into 8 easy steps.
Okay, hello and welcome to the webinar on 8 steps to successful bone augmentation. So today I'm going to talk about bone augmentation and how it relates to incorporating it into a general practice. If we first look at studies, what happens after an extraction? We know that 1 year after an extraction, there's significant amount of bone loss horizontally and vertically if no treatment is done to the ridge, such as a socket preservation technique. So even with socket preservation techniques, sometimes this will result in a ridge which has inadequate bone quantity for implant placement. So the dentists are confronted with this type of situation all the time. This is a study that I put up to show you the prevalence of how often bone regeneration techniques are needed. So if you look at this study shows what percent of potential implant sites will require some type of bone augmentation procedure. And I have A, 10%, B, 20, 30 is C, D is 40, and E is 50%. So if you selected D, that is correct. So about 40% of potential implant sites will need some type of grafting. That is rather significant. So what do we see, though? A lot of times, practitioners who are not trained in doing ridge augmentation procedures or who don't do that on an everyday basis run into issues when they try to place implants into these compromised ridges. So what ends up happening is an implant is placed, as you can see here, in inadequate bone, and usually that results in a rather high failure rate. A second option is for you to get a smaller diameter implant. And there's many companies out there that make smaller diameter implants and mini implants. The problem with this is we're looking at placing a prosthesis on this implant. And the prosthesis does not only have to be functional, but it has to be aesthetic. For an example, if we're replacing the lower molar, mesial distal diameter of a lower molar is about 11 millimeters. So if you have a 1.8 or 2 millimeter implant, that certainly results in biomechanical issues, offset forces, and basically a lower success rate. Also it runs into aesthetic issues that you can have with those type of situations. And then another option would be to osteoplasty the ridge down to where you have enough ridge width and then place an implant. But a lot of times this runs into an aesthetic issues you can be seen here. So the the prosthetic tooth that will be replaced is going to be longer. So prosthetically, it's going to be problematic, and aesthetically, it's going to be problematic. So if we look at ideally what should we do is to rebuild the ridge, to put that bone back to where it once was. And how do we do that? Well, there's numerous techniques. The most common used today in implant dentistry is a technique called guided bone regeneration. And what guided bone regeneration is where we put tent screws, these little screws, into the bone. What that does is that maintains the space. We put bone grafting material, we put a membrane over that to protect it, and then we allow it to heal uneventfully. If it heals without any pressure, usually this is very, very successful and very, very predictable. So when we go back in and we go ahead and make our implant preparation, it's going to be in the host bone that was very similar to when the natural tooth was there. So when the final result, the final prosthesis is placed on, it will look and function just like the natural tooth. So the goal of today's lecture is to teach you how to do this guided bone regeneration in 8 very simple steps. And this will lead to a very predictable technique for you to use in your practice. So what I've come up with is these 8 steps for success. So I'm going to go through each one of these in depth, and then we'll summarize it at the very end. But before we do that, I like to give analogies. And bone grafting is very similar to baking. So here I have an example of baking bread. You have all the ingredients there on the left. There's 8 steps to basically make the bread. If you skip one of the steps or one of the ingredients, it's not going to work. So what you need to do is think of it, baking bread, baking a cake. If you skip a step or use another material or take these steps out of sequence, what will happen is your predictability for this procedure is going to go down significantly. So let's talk about step 1. The first thing we have to do is look at the ridge, and that should include taking a CBCT scan. A CBCT scan is the most accurate way that we can determine the extent of the bony defect. It allows us to see in a 3rd dimension how much bone is there and what we actually have to do to build that ridge back up to its pre-existing condition. What you don't want to do is go in without a CBCT and then you find out that the defect or the bone issue is more significant than what you thought, and then that runs into problems. So what I have done is I have 6 different defects. And what I would like you to do is when you look at a bony defect, put it into one of these types. And why do I want you to do that? Because there are very predictable defects and very unpredictable defects. And not every bone defect is the same. And the first thing that you have to understand to make it predictable, you want to make sure that the defect that you're grafting is predictable and you're using the right materials and protocol. So the first type of defect is what we call small depression. Where do we usually see these type of defects? Well, when we place an implant into compromised bone, where we might have a couple of the threads exposed or an area on the implant that's very, very thin. So a small depression, if we look at it, it's most commonly on the buccal lingual after we place an implant, usually less than 3 millimeters in thickness. And what I have below that is what I call a difficulty scale. So my difficulty scale is 0 being the easiest, 10 being the most difficult. So for this type of defect, it's about a 2. So it's probably the easiest of all the defects to graft predictably. If you don't graft these type of defects, what ends up happening is if you see the photos on the lower right, you end up with a dehiscence or a fenestration, and then you have a peri-implant issue, also an aesthetic issue, and then the prognosis for that case goes down significantly. So you always want to graft these type of cases. So how do we usually do it? Well, you can see the bone, the implant being exposed there on the left. On the second to the left, we decorticate it, we place bone, we place a membrane, and that's basically it. So it's a very, very simple procedure. Where do we get this bone? The easiest place to get bone to place here is from the burr. So when we're making our osteotomy, usually you can harvest bone from the flutes of the burrs and use that type of bone. You can supplement it with some allograft, and we'll talk about the different types of bone here in a minute. But this is a very, very easy way to do it, and it's very, very predictable. Autogenous bone, especially mixed with allograft, is a very good, ideal type of bone. The second type of defect is where we get more bone loss, usually from the buccal to the lingual, and we start to get what we call a concavity. Now, a concavity is a rather predictable defect. Why does that occur? Again, from the buccal plate being lost, and it's what we call a four-wall extraction socket. So after you extract the tooth, the buccal plate resorbs and it ends up with this concavity, most commonly in the anterior maxilla. On a difficulty scale, I have it as a 4. So it's a rather easy graft. And the reason why I have it as a 4 is because it's easy to be contained, the graft material. So let me explain what that means. So if you look at the pre-op image on this case, you see the 2 green arrows. You can see where the concavity is. So when you graft this type of bone, it makes it very, very predictable because it helps hold that bone in. It gives you some retention. So the analogy I like to use for this type of defect is a catcher's mitt. It holds the bone in. Secondly, what it does is it gives us a good blood supply. So when we put any type of allograft or autograft or whatever type of bone substitute you're using into a defect, we need blood vessels to grow into it. And by holding that material there, not letting any micro movement on, it makes it very, very predictable. So the second type of concavity is a very predictable type of defect. Now we're getting into the more extensive or more difficult type of defects. The third is what I call a convex or a straight. And why this one is a little bit more difficult is because we don't have the retention that we have like with the concavity one. And it's harder to keep the bone on basically an inclined plane. So if we look at it, why does it happen? Again, loss of the buccal plate and length of time. The greater the bone is allowed to resorb, the less bone that will be there. Again, the most common area is the anterior maxilla. I have it on a difficulty scale of 0 to 10, about a 6. So this is a lot more difficult. And why is that? Because it's an inclined plane. So you can see that image on the right where I just have that green depiction there, which is basically bone graft, and it's going to want to slide off. It's an inclined plane. Also, soft tissue is harder to get closure on this. So you end up having to stretch the tissue more. And with the bone bone possibly moving, this type of defect can result in a lot of complications. So a case example is here on the left. You can see it's basically a straight inclined plane. And you can see the bone that is grafted on the right, the post-op. It can be done very, very easy if you use the right technique. So the one thing you'll see in this image versus the last image I showed you is you have more tent screws here. And we'll get to that in a minute. And the reason that you use more is to prevent that sliding or movement of that bone graft material. The fourth type is a vertical or a height defect. And what that is where we're actually growing height and width. And this is rather difficult. And that's why I have on a difficulty scale 8 out of 10. It's usually when you lose the buccal and the lingual plate and length of time. So an increased length of time, loss of buccal and a lingual plate. It's what we call division C ridge. So why is this so difficult? Well, clinicians often think you can grow bone back up onto the adjacent teeth. So if you have bone loss on the adjacent teeth, the only place that you can actually predictably grow this bone to is that yellow line. So it's the bone levels on the adjacent teeth. You can't build up onto the actual root surface. So you have to take that into consideration when you're looking at the final prosthesis. A lot of these final prostheses for these type of defects are going to be very over contoured. So they're going to have a crown to implant ratio issue, a vertical cantilever, and also an aesthetic issue. So you must take that into consideration. So as you can see here on the left, if you look at the bone level on the mesial of those two teeth, and then you can see the post-op bone graft that is right up to that area. So again, very difficult, if not impossible, to grow bone onto a denuded tooth. The next one is where it's buccal and the lingual, and it is very, very thin. And again, this is a difficult one. I have an 8 out of 10. Usually we see this in the anterior maxilla and the anterior mandible. Why is it challenging? Because to get the tissue release, to get maintain space maintenance, and to contain the graft is very, very challenging because we're asking the body to grow a lot of bone in these areas. And then we have to make sure there's tissue closure over it on the buccal and the lingual, which is difficult. In addition, because there's very little host bone, it's rather difficult to keep the tent screws, which we need to maintain the space, in the bone. And we'll talk about that in a couple minutes. So here's a case example. Here's a pre-op seeing the buccal and the lingual defects. Here's intraoperatively just placing a tent screw because there's really not much space to place multiple screws. And then you can see the post-op where you grow basically some height, but a lot of width on these type of defects. And again, these are ones that you want to wait till you have a lot of experience and your learning curve has increased with these type of bone grafts. And then the last type is what we call an advanced or complex. And this is where you have very little host bone, such as the top image, or on the lower image where you have a vital structure that will come into play when bone grafting. And I call these advanced and complex to where a lot of these cases are basically untreatable. They would need a autogenous block graft. They usually result from extensive atrophy and trauma. Very poor success rate, high morbidity, and again, you have to look at where the vital structures are, complication rates. As you can see on that Panorex on the right, you have a division D mandible. Now you're looking at pathologic fractures, things like that. So these are ones I would highly recommend staying away from, especially early in your learning curve on that. So that was step one, to identify the type of defect. Step two is flap design and incision design. So let's take these one at a time. Let's first talk about incision design. I'm going to give you some principles. And if you adhere to these principles, it's going to make this very, very predictable, and it's going to make it a lot easier for you. So when we look at incision design, you always want to have a broad-based incision design. What does that mean? Well, you can see the two yellow markings there where it diverges. And what that does is it maintains the blood supply. So you want blood supply coming to where the defect is. And by doing a broad-based incision design, that allows you to maintain blood supply, because again, the blood supply is going to allow this to heal. So if you have decreased blood supply, you're going to have decreased healing. So if you look at the image on the lower right here, on the far right, where you don't have a broad-based incision, where it's brought back, it's actually convergent, what ends up happening is you're cutting off the blood supply, so there's less blood supply going to the flap of that area, and because there's less blood to that, it's going to heal more unpredictable. You're going to have a higher incidence of incision line opening and just a lot more complications. So the bottom line is you always want to maintain a broad-based incision, similar to that clinical image on the left where you can see where the green arrows are as a broad-based incision. Second principle is minimize the extension of the flap. This is something early on, 20, 30 years ago, we would make very big flaps, thinking it's easier to get it closed and maintain the incision line. Well, we have new techniques to reduce the tension of the flap, so that's really not needed now. So what we do know is the more that you flap, the greater blood supply issue that you will have. So if you look at this study, 1/3 of early bone osteogenesis is derived from the periosteum. So if you make a large flap, what it does is it compromises the blood flow to that area. So again, minimize it. Usually we're staying within the confines of the defect, such as in this situation where this is a single tooth, and you can see our incision is encompassed just within that single tooth area. The third incision design principle is something that is basically a game changer. We used to do a full crestal flap, and we would always get tissue atrophy and end up with black triangles. Now, what we recommend is what we call a papilla-sparing incision. And what is a papilla-sparing incision? It's where we leave approximately 1 millimeter more of the tissue attached to the adjacent tooth. So why do we do that? Well, papilla are supported by the supracrestal fibers. And if you reflect those supracrestal fibers, what will end up happening is they will not heal to the same level that they once were. And you'll end up with what that black triangle that I was talking about, as you can see on that clinical image on the lower right. So what you want to do is, if you use a papilla-sparing incision, what you maintain those supracrestal fibers, and you prevent that tissue recession. Step 3, tissue reflection and tissue release. So this is also one of the very most important steps of this whole process. It used to be where we would do a bone graft, and then we would stretch the incision over the grafted site, and then it had a high incidence of incision line opening. Since we utilize these techniques for releasing the tissue, what that does is that has decreased the incision line opening, which is the most common complication after a bone graft, significantly. So first, we're going to go over reflecting the tissue. So with tissue reflection, you always want to get a full thickness flap. If you leave any tissue on the bone, the graft material will not grow there. So basically, you have to remove any soft tissue remnants from the bone, and you have to expose the bone fully. So our first principle is to achieve a full thickness flap. You try to minimize any trauma to that, because again, that will decrease the blood supply, but you want to make the flap as small as possible that will allow you to have access to the defect. The second principle is you're going to release the tissue. And what do we mean by releasing the tissue? Basically, what we're going to do is take that tissue that used to be adhered to that bone, and we're going to sever the fibers in the periosteum that will allow that tissue to relax. By allowing it to relax, what will end up happening is we're going to be able to suture this with very little tension on it, and it will be very, very predictable. So there's two ways that we do this. One is called a periosteal release, where we hold the flap up, and then we usually use a 15 blade, and by holding the tissue with forceps, usually we use Atson forceps, tissue pickups, and you'll be able to feel the tissue fibers just relax. Just by starting to sever those fibers will allow that tissue to basically grow and to release all that tension on it. The second way to do it is what we call a blunt dissection. And I like to use Metzenbaum scissors, blunt end, and where you go into the tissue layer where you made the incisions with the 15 blade, and basically you go in with them closed and you open them up. By opening them up, what ends up happening is you stretch all the fibers, and by stretching the fibers, you're able to stretch that tissue and to take all the tension off of it. So the summary of this is we're first going to do a full thickness reflection. Then we do periosteal release incisions within the periosteum. And then we do a blunt dissection, which stretches the tissue. What is our goal? Our goal is, when we're all done, is to have that tissue relax to where we can go ahead and suture that flap. If you stretch the flap and tie sutures where there is a lot of stress or a lot of tension on it, what will end up happening is on almost all sutures, you lose the tensile strength of that suture, usually after a couple days or a week or so, and it will end up opening up. And once you get an incision opened up, that becomes problematic. So a summary is, if you look at the Klenko image on the right, that green line is where the ridge is. So I've stretched the tissue at least 5 millimeters over where that ridge is, the center of the ridge. So that is our goal, to get 5 millimeters or more of the tissue over that, so it will heal uneventfully. So our fourth step is preparing the recipient site. So when we look at the recipient site, this is something that we got wrong many, many years ago. What we would do is expose the defect, put bone over top, and then cover it up and just hope that it would work. Now there is a more true technique that's definitely a lot more predictable. The first thing is, though, that you have to remove all the soft tissue, as I said when you did the full thickness reflection. Any soft tissue attachment on the ridge will result into inadequate bone growth or possibly no bone growth. So you have to remove it. So how do we do it? Well, my favorite instrument is a 2-4 mold. And it comes in the 4 side, which you can see here, which is the large spoon side, or a smaller 2 side, which is on the other end of the instrument, and you use it in a scraping motion. So you can actually scrape any of these soft tissue attachments off the ridge so that you're able to get this very predictable. The second way to remove the soft tissue is with burrs. And you can use, on the left is a round burr. My more common technique to do this is with an acrylic burr, as you can see here on the right, where basically you're going to go up onto the ridge and just remove any of the soft tissue with a burr. What that does is that roughens the surface also, which gives us more retention for the bone substitute material, and also removes any of that soft tissue that will prevent our bone from healing. The next thing we're going to do is what we call decortication. And this is also a game changer. You must do this procedure, because what does this do? When you put pilot holes into the bone and you perforate that cortical bone, it initiates what is called the regional acceleratory phenomenon, RAP. What is RAP? Well, RAP is a technique that basically we traumatize the bone so the body recognizes it as trauma, and it then releases cytokines and growth factors to that area to heal. So again, what does that mean? Well, when we irritate the bone or traumatize it, The body sends osteoprogenitor cells, which stimulate osteoblasts, and also it stimulates blood vessels to grow into the area. So basically, it gives us a jump start on the healing process. In addition, the decortication, what it does is it allows for mechanical interlocking of the bone graft. So basically, it gives us mechanical retention so that that bone graft material does not move. Now, how do we know about this? Well, an orthopedic surgeon in the 1980s by the name of Frost did all the research on this. And what he found when he was doing his orthopod surgeries, if he would decorticate the bone, he was seeing better hard tissue and better soft tissue healing. So he is the one who is basically came up with the wrap technique, and it is definitely increase the predictability of these type of procedures. If we look at a couple studies on the wrap technique, here's one study: accelerates the normal healing rate by 2 to 10 times. It increases blood flow into the graft site so that we get angiogenesis. Angiogenesis is where we get blood vessels to grow into the area. Here's another study: around 30% greater bone regeneration and higher bone density at grafted sites if you decorticate it. So it is significant. It has been well studied and well documented. And again, that is something that needs to be done. Now, one extra recommendation: if you can see that image there on the right, you can see where all the decortication holes are, and you can see where the bleeding is. You always want to see bleeding in the holes. That means that we're getting blood into the area, which brings basically growth factors. If you look on the left image, you can see some of the lower decortication holes have no bleeding. And this is something that is rather significant. So you have to make sure that you get the bleeding, because you won't get the full extent of the wrap technique unless you have bleeding. Now, you don't want to go through the lingual plate. Usually you just go in through the buccal cortical bone and into the cancella spaces, and that usually initiates the bleeding. Now, how do we do that? We can use crosscut fissure burrs, which is probably the most common, and you can put them every couple millimeters. And depending on the thickness of your graft will depend on actually how many decortication holes. The thicker the graft, the more blood you want into the area, so the more holes that you want to utilize. Step 5. Space maintenance. What do I mean by space maintenance? Well, space maintenance is the technique where what we do is we maintain the space of the graft so that the bone graft can heal uneventfully. Now, there are numerous ways to do this. Probably the easiest way, especially with the smaller defects, is what is called a tent screw. So a tent screw is this little screw here on the left. These are made by Selvin. These are the newer, larger, they're basically a very nice convex polished surface, and they retain the space very, very nice. They give us the structural support that we need to allow that bone graft material to remodel and regenerate during the healing phase. So the tent screw concept, also called a tent pole, prevents collapse of the graft. If you get collapse of the graft, your graft is not going to heal and you're not going to get any bone growth. So these screws can be placed in a position to allow you to maintain the space. And these screws are taken out prior to the implants being placed. They usually come in 3 different sizes. Again, I recommend the Selvin screws, which are very easy to use, and they're very broad-based and very nice. So why the tent screws? It gives us a space maintenance. How many screws do we need? It all depends on the bone contour that we're trying to achieve. So we don't need as many screws if we're only trying to grow a millimeter to a bone. If we're trying to grow 4 or 5 millimeters of bone, we need more screws, and they should replicate the bone contour. As an analogy, you can see this is an outdoor tent on the left. And you have these poles that maintain the space or keep the tent from moving or collapsing. So this is a very predictable situation. The larger the tent, the more the poles. If you don't, what will end up happening is it will collapse. And if it collapses, you're not going to get the bone growth. So put that in your memory, this image on the left. The more poles, the greater it's going to hold up that tent, which is going to maintain the space, which is going to allow our body to grow new bone. So when we look at what size screws, it's always nice to use the CBCT cross section. You can measure, and it's very easy. You can determine how much bone you need to grow, and that will determine how large of a screw you have to place and where you have to place it. So you want to visualize the end result contour that you need. So you can see here that I'm looking on the buccal and the lingual, and then the screws are placed accordingly to fulfill those requirements. Step 6 is membrane placement. So once we have the tent screws placed, we've decorticated it, we have all the soft tissue off. Now what we have to do is protect our graft. So we're going to use a membrane, and a membrane is a biological and mechanical barrier to protect our graft. So what are the goals? Well, number one is we need to isolate that graft from the soft tissue. So by putting a membrane over the top, it prevents the epithelium from growing into the graft and causing destruction of our bone graft. It also prevents bacteria from penetrating into the graft. So basically, it's going to protect our bone graft. And if you let that bone heal uneventfully with no movement, no penetration from the epithelium or bacteria, it's going to do this very, very predictably. It also helps in the space maintenance. So it holds everything together, all the bone graft material. It maintains the clot. So we have a clot under there that we want stability of that, because that's going to hold all the bone graft material together, and it's going to allow for uneventful healing. So the membrane also has the goal of maintaining the space. And then the third is containing the graft. It prevents the migration of the graft material. Most of these grafts are particulate grafts, which means they're basically like a small particle size or a powder, and they can move, especially if there's material put on it or a prosthesis that puts pressure on it. So what the membrane does is it prevents that material from actually moving. So there's multiple benefits of the membrane. The question is, what type of membrane? I could talk probably all day on this subject, so I'm going to give you the Cliff Note version of this. There are basically two different categories of membranes. What's called non-absorbable, which means you put the membrane in, but you have to go back in with a secondary surgery and remove it, or resorbable membranes, which is a membrane that you put in and the body degrades it, and it degrades over a certain time period depending on what type of material it is. So what I would recommend to keep this very easy, the most simple membrane is a collagen membrane, because it is absorbable, so you don't have to go in and do a second procedure. Secondly, it comes in different types. And the different types is what on the left is a regular collagen, which can be up for 6 to 8 to 12 weeks. Or on the right is an extended collagen for larger grafts, which can go 4 to 6 months. So usually the collagen that's extended is called a cross-link collagen. So it's made to resorb a lot faster. So what our protocol is, if it's a smaller graft, you use a regular collagen. If it is a larger graft, greater than 3 millimeters, then you're going to want to use a cross-linked extended collagen. Other alternatives are the non-resorbable, which is the left here is a PTFE. Again, you put that membrane in. That's a dense PTFE membrane that can be exposed to the oral environment. However, you do have to go in and remove it. They also have a PTFE with reinforced titanium. So that gives you the reinforcements. It's similar to using the tent screws because it's more rigid and it maintains the space. And a third technique is titanium mesh. And this is very rich in material. However, this is very, very technique sensitive. Actually, all three of these type of membranes are technique sensitive. I would recommend you hold off on these type of membranes until you get a lot more cases under your belt, because there is certainly a learning curve with these type of membranes. Now, as I said, the bone material, the bone graft material cannot move. So you have to stabilize it. How do you stabilize it? We use tacks. And in some situations we can use tacks. Other times, as I hear, an alternative to tacks is you can tuck the membrane under the flat margins, and sometimes that works. But what the tacks do is it prevents the membrane from moving. My recommendation is the Selvin. Their tack kit here on the left is very, very user-friendly. It comes in two different sizes, a 2 and a 4 millimeter tack, and they're rather sharp. They're easy to use. Basically, here on the left, you have your membrane placed, and then you use this instrument, and usually use a small mallet that will just tap the tack into the cortical bone, and basically it holds the membrane in place so it prevents any movement. So one recommendation is you always want to fixate the membrane first before you graft. So what do I mean by that? If you graft it, then put the membrane over top and then tack it, on some grafts it will work, like the previous one that I showed you. But on grafts like this, where the access may be a little bit difficult, what we recommend is you fixate one side. So in the top image, number one, the membrane has been tacked inferiorly, and then you can graft it. And then after it's grafted, then you basically push the membrane over and you can fixate it on the lingual or on the crest of the ridge. So this just prevents your bone graft material from moving if you do it prior. Other techniques out there are to use sutures. This is a more complex and very difficult procedure to do. It works very nice in certain situations, but again, I would hold off on this type of procedure until you have some, again, procedures under your belt, some graft cases under your belt. The step 7 is grafting. So we're actually now going to place the graft into the site. So what we're looking at here is we've tacked the membrane superiorly. Now we're grafting, and then we're going to push the membrane over top of it. So the big question is, what type of bone? I could talk about this all day, but we have very, very limited time. So I'm going to give you a summary here. First of all, xenograft, which is usually bovine. It's usually from a bone from another species, like an animal. The problem with xenografts is it doesn't predictably resorb. And because of that, it stays in sites too long. So unless you have a very large graft or you have an extended period of time, these usually don't work as good as the other types of bone. So we don't use xenograft. Alloplast is a synthetic type of bone, which usually doesn't turn into good load-bearing bone anyway, so this is a material that you don't want to use. So what does that leave us with? Autogenous bone, which is bone from the patient's own body, or allograft bone, also from the same species. Basically, it's cadaver type of bone. So let me give you our protocol with this. So if the defect is greater than 3 millimeters, what we like to do, and what is seen in the literature is more predictable, is our first layer is autograft. And then what we do is we have a second layer where we veneer that autograft with an allograft. So our option 1 is larger defects, autograft, and then allograft. Option 2 is smaller bone grafts where we can just use the allograft and we don't have to worry about harvesting any autograft. So let's look at first, where would you get autograft? I explained earlier when we looked at the very small depression defects, you can get it from the burrs. But in these cases, you're actually not going to be placing implants, so you're not going to have the luxury of harvesting from the burrs. So we have to go to another source. The most common is the tuberosity, ramus, or the symphysis area. So if we look at these two areas, or the three areas, the tuberosity is probably the easiest to get to. This is usually cancellous bone, maybe a little bit of cortical bone, but it's very, very easy to harvest. The only concern is that some people don't have a lot of bone back in the tuberosity. However, if you look at this image on the left, this patient has plenty of bone. And sometimes you can get plenty of bone. I've actually done sinus grafts where I filled up the whole sinus just with tuberosity bone. So it's very extremely variable, but it is a nice place to get it. A second area is the ramus. And the ramus is an area, if you're used to doing third molars, it's a common area where you're making an incision. You can do trephine burrs, which are special burrs that make elliptical and drill sites into the host bone, and then you take small little particles out. A second is, my favorite is using a double action rongeur. And basically you scrape the bone. By scraping the bone, you get little bone particles, and then you can put into the site. And the third is there's all type of bone scrapers. These are from Selvin. So if you look at their catalog, there's different types of scrapers that you can get. Ones are disposable, other ones are reusable. But the bottom line is you harvest auto bone from these sites. A third site that I originally talked about, the symphysis, this is an area that we used to harvest bone a lot from. But because of the morbidity, taking bone out of the chin, that's something that we've really gotten away from. And I actually didn't even include it now as a real viable option. Our layer 2, the allograft, the question is what type of allograft? There's different types. And let's look at the different types and which one should we use. First of all, an allograft, they all heal by osteoconduction and some heal by osteoinduction. So if we look at the two main types, are demineralized freeze-dried bone allograft and mineralized freeze-dried bone allograft. So what is the difference? Well, demineralized, this bone is put in hydrochloric acid, and basically the bone morphogenic protein is exposed and it becomes what we call osteoinductive. However, the demineralized freeze-dried bone is fast resorbing, and we'll get back to that in a second. The mineralized is not fast resorbing. It is not put in hydrochloric acid, so the body actually has to degrade it, which allows us to have a longer space maintenance. So it maintains the space longer for the body to basically degrade it. So when we look at, is it a good idea to use all demineralized? No, because it'll resorb too fast for the body to grow new bone. Can we use mineralized? Yes. That basically equals the graft resorption. So the bone regeneration and the graft resorption equal each other. And that is probably, as a universal type of bone, the most common that we can use. So what the different types that we use are the mineralized corticocancellous. And there also is a second alternative where you can use a combination of the mineralized and the demineralized. LifeNet Selvin here has a 70-30 mix where it's 70% mineralized and 30% demineralized, and it's already mixed for you, so you don't have to use two different bone types. When we go ahead and place the allograft, usually we use a packer and a little spoon like that, and basically you just pack it around the tent screws, and then you put your membrane in over top of that. So let's look at two quick case examples. Here is a large graft, so we're going to place autograft. So we decorticated it, we put our tent screws. Here is our first area of autograft. So we put the autograft around the tent screws. Then we veneer it with the allograft. If you can see on the superior aspect of this image, you can see the membrane. And then what we're going to do is after we pack it in, we're going to fold the membrane over top of it, which will protect it. And sometimes you can tack it underneath the tissue or tuck it under the tissue or tack it to prevent it from moving. And then you can see this is the post-healing. So going from very little ridge to a rather significant ridge by doing that technique. Here's a second technique where it's just the allograft. Here's the pre-op. Here's the grafting. You can see the tent screws that hold the graft up. And there is the post-op. So you can see a ridge in height and width that where it was able to be grown. Here's another case. It used to be very difficult to grow bone in the posterior mandible. Here's a case of pre-op. You can see where it's a ridge deficiency. On the right is the post-op with the implants in. So you can see how much bone that could be grown just from using those tent screws and the technique that I just showed you. Some elective techniques, and again, this is, I'm going to give you a very short synopsis on this. We usually like to use local antibiotics. The reason is that you don't get blood supply into the center of the graft for weeks to months. So by using a local antibiotic, they've been very well studied. The problem is that a lot of practitioners use the wrong antibiotic. Our recommendation is Ancef, which is a cephalosporin. And if the patient has a true allergy to a beta-lactam antibiotic, they can use clindamycin. So why Ancef? Ancef has been studied significantly in orthopedic surgery. It's used in a lot of techniques in orthopedic surgery. It's been shown to have no adverse effect on bone growth, and it works very, very well with the bone graft material. You can get this in my book. I have a summary of how to do this, but usually what we'll do is we'll reconstitute it to 4 times the 90 level, which is about 500 milligrams per ml. And then we'll put about 0.2 mLs on the membrane and 0.8 on with the bone graft material. And again, you can get that in the bone graft chapter in my textbook. A second elective procedure is platelet-rich fibrin or sticky bone, where we draw blood, and then we either make it into a membrane or we reconstitute it into the graft material and make sticky bone. And then we use the bone inside as our allograft bone substitute, and then we can use the membrane as a double membrane over top of our collagen or our PTFE. What this does is this enhances the hard and the soft tissue bone growth. And the last step is the closure. So as I said previously, you have to have tension-free closure. I showed you how to reduce the tension on that. Also, the prosthesis, You want to make sure that you don't have a lot of tension or pressure on the graft. So once we get the graft material placed, we have the membrane placed, we have it fixated. Now we're going to suture it. You want to use a suture material that is high strength. A PGA material, polyglycolic acid is my favorite. It's absorbable, or a PTFE, which is the non-absorbable type. But you want a high tensile strength, because what that does is that prevents that tissue from opening up. So you want to confirm the tension-free tissue. And once you get it to be closed and it's tension-free, usually this will not open up and you will not have any post-op complications. When you summarize the closure of this, you always want to close the crest of the ridge first by the green arrow, and then the release incisions. This will take the tension off of the crest of the ridge incision. That's the area that's going to open up, and that's going to give you the most morbidity if it does open up. So here's an example. Here is a opening of the graft. Here is tissue stretching before the graft is even done. You verify the tension-free flap. Here you place the graft in the membrane. I place this in. See all the bone particles there? You want to make sure you remove all those bone particles from the incision line, because that actually can prevent the incision line from healing correctly. And then you want to close it. Usually we use a continuous locking and then horizontal mattresses. You can see this closure where it actually everts the incision line, which results in a very, very strong, tensile strength incision line that's not going to open up on you. So in conclusion, we have a couple minutes here. The 8 steps I went over, one at a time. You want to make sure you use all those steps. You don't want to skip any steps or substitute any steps. The evaluation of the defect is very important. That will tell you where you should start. My recommendation is start with a small depression or the concavity. Those are the very easy ones. Then get into the convex or the straight ones, which are very, very common. And then get to and try the vertical height ones, or the buccal and the lingual. And these are the more difficult ones. The advanced and the complex, as I told you before, these are ones that you probably don't want to do anyway, because they just have too much of a high morbidity and the predictability is very, very low. So in conclusion, these 8 steps make the process, which used to be very, very difficult, what I believe is very easy. You just have to go step by step. If you want to learn more about this, I've written a lot about this. The Resnik Implant Institute is a great way to learn. We have a hands-on course so you can do these on live patients. And this is a great way to learn. If you want to read about it, my latest textbook, which just came out in last year, the 4th edition, Contemporary Implant Dentistry, has multiple chapters which discuss all the material that I went over today. I want to thank you very much for allowing me to go over this to you today, and I wish everyone the best of luck in their grafting procedures.
Our next speaker is Dr. Ankur Gupta. Dr. Ankur Gupta is an expert in customer service. Armed with what he considered adequate knowledge, hand skills, and a personable demeanor, he watched the startup practice he built in 2005 floundered. Finances became unpredictable and his lower back and spirit toward life became worrisome. Rather than continue that trend, he made a guinea pig out of his office, family, and self, attempting any and all personal and professional experiments in self-improvement. More than a decade later, he enjoys excellent new patient numbers and case acceptance, a solution-oriented dental team, and most importantly, a meaningful and positive identity. He happily shares the failures and successes with dental and community groups throughout the country. We are excited to bring his firsthand account to his presentation today, Extraordinary Customer Service. This session will provide you with practical, implementable, step-by-step ways to be a better clinician, leader, and person.
Hi everyone, this is Dr. Gupta, and I'm a general dentist in the Cleveland area. And I want to start by asking you to compare two scenarios. Now, I have two kids. My kids are 12 and 10, and so this happens pretty often. They come up to me and they ask if they can watch a TV show or if they can play video games or something like that. And I say, yeah, you can, but only after you clean your room and unload the dishwasher. And they promise me that they will. Now, I go and I have to, get some groceries or something like that. I go and run my errand, and when I come back, I notice that they've unloaded the dishwasher, but their rooms are still messy. Okay, that's scenario number one. Scenario number two is my kids ask me the exact same thing. I don't say anything. I say, yeah, that's fine. Go ahead. And then I go out and run errands. When I return, I see that they're both in front of the TV, but they made sure to unload the dishwasher before they started watching. Now, I want you to put yourself in both scenarios. They're identical. Scenario one is identical to scenario two. You went and ran errands, you come back, your kids are in front of the TV, and the dishwasher's been unloaded. Identical. The only difference is in scenario number one, you're pissed. And in scenario number two, you're proud. You're like, oh my God, look at that. They unloaded the dishwasher and I didn't even ask them. And that is a phenomenon in human psychology called either over-promising and under-delivering, or over-delivering without making any promises. In the first scenario, they made me a promise and they under-delivered on that promise, and I ended up being disappointed in them. In the second, I was like, wow, this is great. You're amazing. And I realized that that particular psychological phenomenon is something that we can really capitalize on in our dental offices. See, here's what I realized. I've been a dentist for like 15 years. And even though I feel like I'm a pretty good dentist, I'm conscientious, I try to be ethical, I try to be nice to people, I try to treat them the way I want to be treated, I'm limited by these. I'm limited by my hands. And the reason I'm limited by my hands is because these aren't perfect. These require a little bit of hand-eye coordination that maybe I don't have as optimally as others. And that can be really easily summed up in a bite wing that I saw several years ago. And I looked at this bridge. This patient was here for their checkup and cleaning. And I come in and I make my little small talk with them. And I'm like, whoa, Mary, your bridge on the lower right, oh, I don't know who did that bridge, but it sucks. Like, you're going to need to get this redone. I'm going to have to redo this for you. And my hygienist is like, you did it 2 years ago. I mean, this is bad dentistry. And I don't think that day, 2 years ago, I was like in the mood to be a jerk. I don't think that day I was purposely unethical. I just, on that day, for whatever reason, was limited in my clinical capacity. And I know that most of you that are listening, you're like, dude, I've had a day like that before. I've looked at composites that I've done and I'm not that proud of them. Now for this patient, Mary, it was very important for me to own up to my own problem and take care of it without putting the blame on her. However, the fact is, this is subpar dentistry. But in Mary's eyes, I can do so many other things that are not limited by my hands to make her perceive my office being an extraordinary office. So what I want to share with you in the next 50 minutes is what are the customer service things that you can do in your office that are not limited by anything that can make your office extraordinary. Ideas that nobody else in the entire community where you practice are doing. If you do this, your practice will be extraordinary. And I want to start with fresh flowers. All right. So I noticed that at the place that I go to get my oil changed for my car, it's just like any other crappy place that you get your oil changed, right? It's crappy. You know, that the people have like oil on the towels that are like hanging from their pants or whatever. That's just how it is. We go to places to get our oil changed and it's kind of crappy. But at the one that I go to, there's fresh flowers at the countertop. And I always noticed that. I was like, this place is crappy everywhere else, but that's nice. The fresh flowers are nice. And so I took this back to the office. I said, listen, every Monday morning, let's have fresh flowers delivered to our office so that in our waiting room, there's those nice, cute flowers that people can look at and admire. Because I'm a dude, I'm a middle-aged man, and I admired the fresh flowers at the place that I went to get my car worked on. So I know that other people are going to admire them as well. But we took it a step further. We had them delivered to our office. And then as the end of the week drew near, so in my office, we don't work on Fridays. So on Wednesday and Thursday, as we were getting to the end of the week, during our morning huddle, we determined which patient should be our, quote, patient of the week. And as they leave the office, we say, hey, wait, before you go, I want to give you something. And we take our fresh flowers, we wrap them in either wax paper, or if your budget allows, you can keep them in that glass vase. And you say, hey, you're our patient of the week. We really appreciate having you. I want you to take these fresh flowers home. And of course, because you're running a business, and anytime you do something great, you should try to market it. Take a photo of that and post it on social media. Now, here's a couple examples that we have. These two, they came into our office and it was their anniversary. There was their anniversary and they got their teeth cleaned on their anniversary. Once we got word of that, we were like, oh my gosh, they're definitely going to get the fresh flowers. And sure enough, as they were leaving, taking care of like the money stuff or scheduling their next appointment or whatever it was, our front desk team said, hey, listen, we have something for you. We really appreciate the two of you. We love you. And we really appreciate that you came in on your anniversary. Why don't you take these fresh flowers home? And they really liked it. This guy here, Norman, I did so much work on him. And when it was finally done, after like a year of work on him, a lot of frustration, a lot of ups and downs, unanticipated dental stuff that didn't work out, we were finally done and he was really happy. Of course, he got the fresh flowers. And then this one is one that I think is interesting. We had a patient come in. He's a military veteran. He came in with his wife. And it was around Veterans Day, maybe, or maybe we were just feeling appreciative of military veterans at that time. And we gave them the fresh flowers. And what I think is interesting about this particular slide is that 27 people liked this, 14 people commented on it, and one person shared. That's a whole lot of people that were marketing my dental office on my behalf. But they weren't marketing our dental office because they love me. They don't give a crap about me. They love them. And who wouldn't? Look at these two. I mean, they're like the cutest couple I've ever seen. Of course, people love them. And what they saw was these people that I love went to a dental office and they got treated just a little bit special. And we are going to share in that love. But me, as the dentist, I just get to benefit from the free marketing. So number one is fresh flowers. Number two, the other thing that oil change place had, it had two things in the waiting room that I thought were kind of special. Now you can see in this picture of my waiting room, we have the fresh flowers sitting there below the TV. But there's another thing, and that's coffee. Now that it's post-COVID time, we don't keep our Keurig out in the waiting room anymore, which is too bad. It's something that I really liked having over there. But now we keep the Keurig behind the reception desk. However, its function is the same as it's always been. When patients come in, it is the responsibility of my front desk team to offer them, hey, can I make you some coffee? Most of the time people say no. But here's what I've realized. When we have patients who are upset at us, and all of you have a patient that's going to be angry at you for one reason or the other. They're an unanticipated financial thing. Maybe their lab case isn't ready on time. Maybe they had to wait too long for their appointment. Whatever it was, we take the opportunity to make them feel a little bit better despite their frustration. And we say, hey, can I make you some coffee? That's number one. And number two is, in our waiting room, we have a very nice charging station for both Apple and Android products. It's really nice. It's cute. You can get it on Amazon for like $20. But I can't tell you how many patients I see in my clinical domain, back in the operatories, who say, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you had that charging station up there. I knew that I had this dental appointment and I needed to get a hold of my wife because the kids needed to be picked up. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm the hero. And they're like, man, you're the hero. And I'm like, all right, cool. I get to be the hero. And all it was because I spent $20 for having a very simple product in the waiting room set out there to make patients' lives a little bit easier. The next one, and this is the comfort menu. What I found is certain procedures require VIP treatment. It's kind of like if I fly on Delta Airlines a whole bunch, I like it when the fact that I fly on Delta Airlines a whole bunch all of a sudden necessitates, in their eyes, a little bit of special treatment for me. And I realize as dentists, we have an obligation to take the opportunity to provide a little bit of special treatment for certain patients who they maybe satisfy certain criteria. Here are the criteria. Any procedure that lasts more than an hour and a half, any procedure that requires me or my hygienist to stick lots of needles in lots of different parts of the face. This includes dental hygiene procedures. Any procedure that's going to be bloody later or be bloody at the time of the procedure. Any procedure that is probably going to result in soreness or pain or swelling. Or any procedure that's past a particular financial threshold, any procedure that's expensive. All of these things, if a procedure fits these criteria, we ask the patient if they would like to look at our comfort menu. And our comfort menu is this cute little laminated framed half piece of paper, and it offers the patient, hey, before we get started, can we get you some headphones? Now, these are super cheap headphones that I get on Amazon. I just give them to the patients. And then I bought a little adapter that goes into both Apple and Samsung products. We say, can we get you some headphones so that you can listen to your favorite podcast or your music list? That's number one from the comfort menu. Number two is we bought a couple memory foam or neck wraps that are filled with either rice, beans, or some type of nice smelling stuff. Okay, the memory foam one, it's just more comfortable. It's nice. But the really cool thing about the rice and beans neck wrap is that you can actually throw it in the microwave and wrap it in a launderable cover and then put it around the patient's neck before their procedure. Now, what I've noticed is it's not as comfortable as the memory foam one, but it feels nice, especially for our patients here in Cleveland, because it's cold outside for half of the year. And so a lot of patients really appreciate having that. Another thing is, especially for our elderly patients, especially during the colder season, is offering patients a blanket. Now, I'm lucky. I have a laundry machine in my office. So for me, having neck wraps that we can wrap in a launderable wrapper or having blankets, it's possible for me. Not all of you have a laundry machine in your office, and that's understandable. What I would recommend, though, is getting memory foam neck pads and putting them under the plastic. You know, most of you put plastic over your the backs of your dental chairs. So what you could do is actually wrap memory foam around the junction between the headrest and the backrest, and then put your wrapper over it. So it's still sterile, or at least infection control is still being taken into account, but you can give patients that little bit of neck wrap. The other thing I have here, now I've seen patients, I go to a lot of offices, and I've seen some dental offices offer this, and that's where patients are getting their dental work done, and they get to put their hands in this stuff called paraffin. And I was like, ooh, that is so cool. I'm going to do that. I'm going to take this to my office. Listen, I tried it. It was so gross. It was so inefficient. We were unsuccessful. So I just want to let you all know about this because other offices do this and they do it successfully. I particularly don't. We had to delete this particular item from our comfort menu because it was too nasty. All right, let's talk about weather. Now, I know I'm in Cleveland, which is cold, rainy, snowy, gloomy. And I know some of you are like in Florida and Texas where you don't have the snow, but you still have the rain. Here's what I recommend. Buy several of those big golf umbrellas, okay? Now, don't waste your money like I did. Don't put your stupid logo on it unless you just have money to burn. I did, and it was a dumb idea. I wish I had just bought the umbrellas, nice big golf umbrella. We bought 4 of them, and we have them leaning against the door going outside of the office. Then, when it's raining, especially for our elderly patients, we walk them out to their car with the umbrella, especially for our elderly patients. Now, I'm in my 40s. If it was raining and I was done with some service and the people at the front desk said, hey, can I walk you out to your car? I most likely would say no. And that's just because of some ego thing that I have. So most of our younger patients, they do say no. However, our patients who are over the age of 60, they think it's the most amazing service. They are in love with us when we say, hey, let me walk you out to your car. Dentists, you might be the ones to do it. Now, most of the time, it's either my dental assistant or somebody who works up at the front desk. But sometimes I'm the one who's most free at that moment. I walk them out to their car. The second thing is snow. Now, we have 2 very nice, high-quality snow brush ice scrapers. We bought them on Amazon, but we bought the really nice kind that like extend and it has just a little bit of a fatter, scrapey part. Now, what we do is at the end of the day, so this isn't for all of our patients. This is just our end of the day patients. Most of the time, I'm the most free because my assistants, they still have to clean the room or make a temp. Front desk people, they have to like finish up all the administrative stuff for the day. I'm usually the one who has the most time. So what I do is I walk up and down the hallway and I ask the patients, hey, can I grab your keys? Do you want me to start your car for you? Most patients say no. They do. Most patients, they don't want their dentist to see inside their nasty car. That's cool. That's fine. Some of my team members, they ask me if they can give me their keys. That's fine. And I go out, I start 5 or 6 cars, and then I get my nice scraper and I go out and I scrape everybody's car, wipe off the snow. It's pretty cool for me because it's like exercise. I mean, you do this on 2 or 3 cars and you're like sweating and you feel all warm. And by the way, I need to wait for my car to warm up anyway. And so it's a nice way for me to do a service while I'm waiting for my car to warm up. This is an extraordinary customer service regarding weather. Now let's talk about the handwritten note. All right. I read this in Dental Town or Dental Economics or something like that. And it was like, patients love the handwritten note. And I was like, oh yeah, definitely. So I bought a bunch of stationery. I put it in every op. I put it in my office and I put them at the front desk. And I told the whole team, yo, listen, anytime you have a nice conversation with a patient, anytime it's a new patient, anytime it's a patient referring another patient, anytime there's something special going on, write a handwritten note. And at first, we wrote novels. We were like, we are so glad that you're a patient here. It has been wonderful getting to know you over the years. You have been a real treasure in our office, blah, blah, blah. And it took us like 2.5 minutes to write each note. And we stopped. After like 2 weeks, we stopped. Nobody wanted to do it anymore because it took too much time. It was inefficient. So let me tell you, if you're going to write handwritten notes to patients undergoing anything special, follow this rule. Make it no more than 40 seconds. So if you take longer than 40 seconds to write the note, you're not going to continue doing it. Just stop. Make it super quick. And one tip that I have is start your note by writing just a quick note to blah, 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 blah. Because when you write just a quick note to, you're already setting that patient up to only see a line or two. Now, my hygienists, they have to write a note to all new patients and to any kid. And look at Mindy's note here. She barely wrote anything. Hey, Jalen, I don't know. It was so nice to meet you. Keep up the good brushing. You have a beautiful smile. That's it. You can see right there, it did not take Mindy more than 40 seconds to write that note. She threw in a couple tattoos, an Elmo sticker, and then gave it to the front desk so that they could stamp it, envelope it, and send it out to this kid. Now, the reason I know that this works is because the kid they're both my kids, but the kid on the lower right, we used to give him those dried blueberries. He loved those dried blueberries. And we thought we were being responsible parents because it wasn't flat out candy. So anyway, when he was pretty young, he got a cavity on tooth K. So we took him to a pediatric dentist. The pediatric dentist did a pulpotomy and a stainless steel crown. You can kind of see it, right? On his lower left. You can kind of see that little bit of darkness. That's his stainless steel crown there. One night, my wife was upstairs. She was brushing his teeth, and she saw that there was a pus-draining fistula coming off of tooth K. And she called me upstairs. She's like, yo, you're working tomorrow? I'm bringing him in after school. And I was like, all right, yeah, sure, no problem. I'll see my son and pull his tooth. Well, now let me tell you, for those of you who own your own office, when you bring your kids to the office, you have to agree, your kids act like they own the place, right? They walk in, they fill their pockets with the crap from your treasure chest, and then they do a little small talk with your team. Maybe they use your Wi-Fi to play video games and stuff like that. That's what this kid is used to, but not this day. On this day, he's coming in to have his dad put him in a headlock, stick a couple needles in his face, and then grab a tooth and yank it out. And I'll tell you right now, it was the worst. It was the worst experience. He was crying. I wanted to cry. I was actually so shaky afterwards that I couldn't do the hygiene check on the hygiene patient that was scheduled at the same time because I was too shaky. I just needed time to calm down because it was a really unpleasant experience. The reason I tell you this story is because 2 weeks later, while I'm waiting for the kids to get off the bus, I open up my mailbox and I get this stack of junk mail, and I open up the recycle bin and I'm throwing in the junk mail, and then all of a sudden I see an envelope. And the envelope is from North Ridgeville Family Dentistry. And I'm like, an envelope from North Ridgeville Family Dentistry, the place that I own? That's weird. And I open it. And in the envelope, there was a letter. And it said, Dear Arjun, you are such a brave boy. We think that you are growing to be such a nice kid. Thanks for being so brave when your dad pulled your tooth. We're so proud of you. And I felt myself getting emotional. Me, the dad, but also the guy who pays my employees to write personal notes to people. I was getting emotional about a note that I pay my employees to write to me. And so if I was getting emotional, think about your patients who just told you that they're expecting their first grandchild, or that their daughter is getting married, or that they're worried because their wife was just diagnosed with breast cancer. Think about those patients and the level of emotion that they're going through. And for you to be a part of that emotional experience in their life by doing a very quick and easy but meaningful good deed. That's a handwritten note. And in my opinion, out of all of the things that I'm recommending in this lecture, This is the one thing that I feel you should be compelled to start doing in your office. Now the new patient experience. I know as a dentist that, because I visit a lot of offices and I go to a lot of offices, and the story is usually like this. There's a window and a patient walks up to the window, and then the person at the front desk pulls the window open and they ask for an insurance card. That happens a lot. And if that happens to you, I don't want you to feel like I'm judging you. However, you need to remember something. Your patients, they could have been up all night because they're in pain with their toothache. They could have been up all night because they're so afraid of having a needle stuck in their mouth. Or they could have been up all night because they're so worried about the negative judgment that's going to be put on them because their inability to properly take care of their mouth. These patients are vulnerable. And when they first walk into your office, if you treat them like a number or treat them like any less of a human being, you are ethically doing something wrong. These are people who have put their trust in your office to treat them like humans. And in my opinion, they need to be treated better than they're treated anywhere else they go. I don't care if they go to the doctor's office, go to get a massage, go to get their oil changed, go to the physical therapist, the chiropractor. It is at your office, the dental office, where they're going to be treated, where they say, this is the best I've ever been treated. So in my office, my front desk team is responsible for doing the following. Number one is patients need to be wowed when they walk in. My front desk team is responsible for standing up, making eye contact. We no longer shake hands because of COVID, but they still have to stand up, make eye contact, and then call the patient by name. These are our new patients. We don't see 20 new patients a day. We see like 4, maybe on a good day. So my front desk team has to stand up, make eye contact, call them by name. And then they have to compliment them somehow. Now, women are very, very easy to compliment. Hey, I love your earrings. Ooh, that's such a cute necklace. Oh, I love your shoes. I love your purse. Dudes are a little harder to compliment. You know, I've heard my team say things like, oh, way to go. You made it right on time. Or, oh, awesome. You found the office okay. Or something like that. It doesn't matter. It's part of their job description. They are required to compliment new patients. And then in our office, we do not hand anything over, nor do we take an insurance card. Our front desk team is responsible for, when it's a new patient, they have to get up, they have to walk around the front desk domain, and they have to sit with the patient, sit side by side, to go over paperwork, to offer them coffee, to introduce them to nearby team members, to ask them if they need to use the restroom, and they can walk them there. That is a requirement in my office for my front desk team to be responsible for. Because in my opinion, anything that we can do to make that patient say, oh, wow, I've never been treated this way before, that is something that is a requirement. It's not just a perk for my dental office. And then the last thing is, my team has to learn something about that patient, learn something about them. They have to sit there and say, so tell me, how did you hear about our office? Or so tell me, what do you do for a living? Tell me a little bit about your family. Tell me a little bit about what you like to do for fun. In my office, every person who first interacts with a new patient has to somehow learn about them. And this is an art form in itself that I actually can't go into too much detail about because of time constraints for this lecture. But learning about people is not as easy as just asking one question. So how's the weather? And then just moving on to something else. It's an art form in itself that you can always shoot me an email at the end of today's lecture and I can go on about it. Okay? Let's talk about those times in which your office is running late. Now, I've been to a lot of offices and I've seen very, very, very efficient operations. I believe my office has efficient operations, but I would be lying if I told you that we don't have patients that wait 15 plus minutes. And I think you would be lying if you said, oh no, we never have patients wait that long. That's just not true. Sometimes clinical stuff just happens and it's unanticipated and it takes more time than we had thought it would. So patients are going to wait 15 minutes. And so after a team meeting, I said, hey, what do we need to do when patients wait for 15 minutes plus? And the ideas were, we need to apologize, or we need to apologize and give them a gift or something like that. And so I did this. I printed out a survey and I handed it to a bunch of patients for like 6 months. I said, okay, in this survey, you arrived on time to an appointment, but you're made to wait 15 minutes or more. Please fill in the blanks below on how this has been addressed in the past. The office does not acknowledge it in any way. The office staff apologizes for running late, or the office staff apologizes and presents a small token of apology, like a coffee gift card or something like that. And what I found is most people say, dude, offices are always running late, and they never say a thing. Like, I've been in my pediatrician's office like 50 times. They've never been on time, and they never said anything. And so I said, okay, follow-up question. My follow-up question is this: would the second or third option reduce your frustration? And what do you think my answers were? It was like 100%. Yes, it would reduce my frustration if they apologized in some way. And then my third question was, would the third option reduce your frustration even more than the second option? That's where they get a coffee gift card. And what I was surprised to learn is the answer was no. It was about 50-50. A lot of people were like, no, I don't need a gift. I just want somebody to acknowledge, hey, you showed up on time, but we're not running on time and we're sorry. And so that's all you really need to do. However, this lecture is called Extraordinary Customer Service. And in my office, I want to be extraordinary. So we give a gift card. We buy probably every so often, we run to Starbucks and we just buy a ton of $5 Starbucks gift cards. We stopped doing Target and Amazon because people aren't as excited about $5 with Target or Amazon as they are for $5 with Starbucks. And that's because they can actually get a full product with $5 at Starbucks. They can't really do that at Target. And the other thing too that I would recommend you do is if you have a local business, like a local coffee shop, especially if the owners of that coffee shop are patients of yours, throw them a bone and buy gift cards from them rather than from these large corporations. And I want to emphasize for all of you doctors that are listening, more important than your team apologizing, you apologize. You know what? It's usually me that's free. I finish with a patient. My team still has to clean that room. They still have to turn the room over. The only thing I have to do at that moment is do some charting. And instead of charting, instead of hiding in my little private office, I go up to the front, I sit down with the patient, I say, listen, I'm so sorry. We thought that our schedule was totally manageable and a couple things just went wrong. And I'm so sorry. I know that you've been waiting for a while. I'm the one who apologizes. And there's just something about it. Patients are like, whoa, cool. The doctor apologized. Awesome. I want to talk briefly about holidays and special events. So in a given year, there's a lot of little special events. There's St. Patrick's Day. And on St. Patrick's Day, we buy a little pot of gold with a bunch of green necklaces and chocolates that are wrapped in gold. And we have those at the front desk. So when patients are done with their appointment, they can grab one of those goodies as a, hey, let's celebrate St. Patrick's Day. For Easter, we hand out obviously we're not ever open on Easter, but the week before Easter, we hand out a bunch of little jars that have Easter eggs in them. Halloween, we might have some giveaways for Halloween. For Christmas, we have giveaways. Back to school, July 4th, etc. Now, my responsibility every year is I'm the March Madness guy. And so I've created a competition every year where people who come in during that week before March Madness, they can fill out a bracket, and whoever fills out the bracket that wins, I buy them a gift card. Now, I live in Cleveland. This picture was taken back when the Cleveland Cavaliers actually made the playoffs because we had LeBron James. And so our winner that year, I bought him Cavs playoff tickets. And then the two runners up, I got them Amazon gift cards. It doesn't really matter. Here's the thing though. There's 12 people that work in our office, and there's 12 special events in a year in general. And so at a team meeting, usually in December or January, we say, hey, we got these special events. Who wants to take one? And we have our dental assistant says, oh, let me take Halloween. And then we have somebody at the front desk who says, oh, let me take St. Patrick's Day. And now it is so automatic in our office. Everybody kind of knows their responsibility. I'm not that mad if we don't do anything. It's all good. But for special events, patients that come in, they get to be in on the celebration. I want to share with you our Halloween video here. So what I want to emphasize here is that we're dentists. These are dental offices. We're not working with life and death here. Yes, we have scared patients. Yes, we do important surgeries. But if you make your office fun, you're not going to get punished. You will not get punished for having a fun office. I know we do serious stuff. But the more fun you have, the more special your office will be, and the more your patients will remember. There's something extraordinary about your office. This particular video is something we shared on social media, and it got a lot of shares. It got a lot of likes. It promoted our office to our community. And it's something that we did more for fun than for any type of marketing or service. Now let's talk about service. A lot of you are dental practice owners. You don't have a human resources department. You don't have to run by and get permission from anyone if you wanted to do something special for your community. And so what I recommend is one day out of the year, do something special philanthropic. It can be a mouthguard day, an oral cancer screening event, donation event, an invitation for underserved schools to come and get checkups and sealants, an invitation to an underserved adult population. Anything that you can do to just have a high population of people in need to get a bunch of free dental care. Now, in my office, it's military veterans. I have my own personal reasons for that, but we know that in our area, there are a lot of military veterans who suffer from dental disease and they don't get it treated in a timely manner because it's hard for them to get into the VA. So one day of year, usually around Veterans Day, we close the office to our normal patients and we open the office to military veterans. And we say, yo, any military veteran, you don't have to be a patient of ours, you don't have to live in the city, you don't have to be anything. You come in and we'll do checkups, cleanings, fillings, extractions, whatever you need for free. Just come on in. So over the years, I think last year we had to cancel it because of COVID, which was sad. But I think that we've done it 5 years in a row, except for 2020. And the numbers of veterans that we see year after year keeps on going up. It's around 120 veterans the last year that we did it. And we take a lot of photos. We market it extremely well. But something like this is it's a huge practice builder. It's a huge brand builder. And you get to do something that you feel really good about. And so I would really encourage any of you who have your own practice, do this. Do this. You can do veterans. You can do poor kids at school, whatever it is. Do something where you treat an underserved population. We actually got into the newspaper one year. It's a pretty cool thing. But if you're going to do it, you have to do it well. And that means you have to start 6 months in advance to make sure that you get the flow of the office well, that your donations, everything like that. Okay? The $15,000 SPY. Now, there are going to be patients of yours who are like, they're ready to drop a ton of cash because they trust you to do some type of dental work on you, whether it's a bunch of dental implants or a bunch of cosmetic work, whatever it is. In my opinion, $15,000 is a lot of money. In yours, it might not be a lot. You're seeing $15,000 cases every day. Cool, good for you. But in my office, I don't see a lot of $15,000 cases. And so in our office, $15,000 is the particular treatment threshold. And when a patient commits to that threshold, we assign a SPY to that patient. That SPY will, during the long course of treatment, they're going to get to know that patient, their hobbies, their interests, etc. And then when treatment is starting to wind down, our SPY then has to go and buy a gift card to some place that a patient really likes because they've been spying on them. They know what the patient really likes. In our case, it's about 1% of treatment. So they're going to go and buy a $150 gift card for a $15,000 case. And it might be to Longhorn Steakhouse because the patient hasn't been able to eat steak for a long time because of their poor dentition. But we know that once we're done with the treatment, the patient will be able to eat their steak. So we buy them a gift card to that steakhouse and we write a personal note and we hand it to the patient at the end of their treatment. Let's talk about you know what? I'm so sorry. I'm looking at the amount of time that I've utilized so far. No, I have time. Okay. Let's talk about a welcome letter. A new patient calls. They make an appointment. They say, hey, your front desk team says, okay, we would love to see you. We have an opening in 2 weeks. The patient's like, oh, that was a nice phone call. Then your front desk person takes the same stationery that you write your normal handwritten notes on, and you write a quick 40-second handwritten note that says, hey, I enjoyed talking to you on the phone. We look forward to meeting you on this date. And maybe if the patient said that they were a Browns fan or whatever, go Browns, and they write this note. Okay? So now you have one note. Then we also, we Google Map the patient's address to our office. We print out that Google Map and we put that in the packet. Then, even though most of our new patient paperwork is digital now, we do it mostly through a digital interface. We do have some elderly patients who still, they need they would rather have it written on paper. And so we put new patient paperwork in there. And then we throw in the $5 Starbucks gift card. And we put it all in one packet. And we send it out to patients, send it out to new patients. Now, I am going to skip over Patient Appreciation Day. This is just a day where we rent out a gazebo at a park. We tell all of our patients that we're having a Patient Appreciation Day. We buy a bunch of raffle items like a new bike or oil change gift cards or something like that. And we have any patient that wants to attend, come and attend our Patient Appreciation Day. Okay? One of the big reasons that I'm skipping this one is because I don't do it anymore. Veterans Day is our big event. We stopped doing Patient Appreciation Day once we started doing Veterans Day. Okay? But this is not a bad idea to try to do yourself. Okay. Scholarship. All of you are in a position, I don't care, whoever you are who's listening, and you're the poorest person amongst every single person who's listening. It doesn't matter. You're still a dentist. And that means you do have some extra income beyond the necessities. I think every single person listening here has the ability to provide some sort of scholarship to a graduating senior at your local school. So all you have to do is give a call to the guidance counselor and say, hey, I'm interested in providing a scholarship. Most dental offices that I counsel, they offer a $1,000 scholarship, but you don't have to. You can do a $250 scholarship, a $500 scholarship, or you can go bigger. Maybe do a $5,000 scholarship. It's all based on what you can budget. And then every year you have graduating seniors write an essay, to win the North Ridgeville Family Dentistry Scholarship. Now, in my opinion, I feel like the really smart kids, they're already getting scholarships. So I base my decision completely on the essay. And the question I ask is, how are you planning to achieve financial peace in your life? That's an important question for me because I was so bogged down in debt when I graduated, and I made a lot of bad decisions when I first started as a young professional. And so I want to see what these younger people have in mind to attain financial peace. And sometimes the essay that I'm most impressed with is not the smartest kid, is not the 4.0 student, is not the 30 ACT student. And it actually fills me with pride to give a scholarship to somebody who may not be the brightest graduating senior. Actually, this kid was like a really smart kid here, but it's nice to offer that scholarship. Post-op. Now, I know a lot of you are offering gauze after you do an implant or an extraction or bone graft surgery. All we do different, we still offer the gauze, but we also include a little pack of Advil, a cold pad. We used to have them branded with like our logo on them, but it was too expensive. So we just bought a whole bunch of little cold packs. We keep them in our freezer. And then when we're done with our surgery, we throw the cold pack in a little baggie with a mini chlorhexidine bottle, a pack of Advil, and of course the gauze, and then a few recipes for smoothies because we know that patient isn't able to chew. And then in our post-op kit, we also have a post-op instructions that have my phone number on them, my actual cell, in case they need to get a hold of me. So this is our little bag here. We have stickers that we put on the bag. Rather than having the bags pre-printed with our brand, we put stickers just because it's a little less expensive. And those Advil packs, those are really expensive. So what we do usually is we buy a big bottle of Advil and we put them in those little tiny envelopes that used to hold x-rays. Okay? This is another post-op kit. Now the phone call. I have found that when I was early in my career, I used to give people my cell phone. Actually, I still do. My business card still has my cell phone written on it. Okay. And my hope is that people don't take advantage of that and call me and text me all the time. I have very few patients that do that. But it's important for me, after I do a major surgery, to call and follow up with that patient. The only problem is when I call, I'm like, please don't pick up. Please don't pick up. Please, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to talk to you. Oh, you picked up. Shoot. Hi, it's Dr. Gupta. Hey, just calling to check on you, right? Instead of that, I've decided to start texting. So for the last 2 years, I call very few patients. And I use Weave, and I know that there's other companies other than Weave, but I like Weave a lot. And what Weave allows me to do is on my cell phone, I have the Weave app. It allows me to press up there where it says messages or to go on the schedule and click a particular patient's name. This is actually one of my hygienist's husband, and he allowed me to do this. And if you see where it shows 2 word balloons, if I click that, I can actually text Jason with the Weave app, and Jason will never get my personal phone number. They will get a text from me, but it's from the office phone number. And then when they text back, it goes back onto the Weave app rather than my personal cell phone. And I find that very, very helpful. And it gives me an opportunity to send 2 or 3 texts at the end of the day really quick, really easily. I want to tell you all, the reason I shared all of this information with you, all of these ideas, is because of a commercial I saw when I was a kid. So I grew up in the 80s, and I saw this commercial, and it was this old lady. She's sitting at a really fancy restaurant. And this guy with a hidden camera walks up to her, and he says, "Excuse me, ma'am, can I ask you, how do you like your coffee?" And the lady's like, "Oh, the coffee, it was splendid. It was remarkable," whatever. And the man with the hidden camera is like, "Oh, really? You like the coffee?" She goes, "It was delicious." And the man's like, "Did you know that coffee is the super crappy, cheap, instant, freeze-dried, terrible coffee?" And the lady's like, "Oh, ha, 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 ha." And it was a commercial for the crappy coffee, right? And the reason that this commercial stuck with me was because I was thinking, how is this possible? How is this lady liking crappy coffee? Like, crappy coffee is crappy coffee. That's how it is. If you put this crappy coffee next to some organic, freshly ground Jamaican coffee bean, it would lose 100% of the time. But it won in this case. It won. It was the better coffee. And the reason it won was not because of the quality of the coffee. It was because of those table linens and because of those flowers as the centerpiece of the table. It was because of the way that the wait staff took care of this woman. It was because of the quality of the china that she was drinking out of. The coffee wasn't what made this lady think it was splendid. It was all the other stuff. And I talked at the beginning of this lecture about our hands and our limitations with our hands, and the fact that no matter how long you practice, how conscientious, how good a dentist you are, how many CE courses you attend, there are going to be times in which you're limited by your hands, where there's too much saliva, there's blood, the patient opens their mouth and their anatomy is getting in the way of for you to properly access that particular dental procedure. Your hands are going to fail you. But one thing that will never fail you is your effort. And I really encourage you, put all the effort you can into making your patients say, listen, this place is so extraordinary. Even when dentistry stuff goes wrong, it doesn't matter. I still love this place. I still love this dentist because this place is extraordinary. And what you'll find is dentistry becomes less stressful because you know that the patient's going to love you even when the inevitable occurs. Now, here's the big problem with my lecture just now. I just talked for 50 minutes about extraordinary customer service. Well, the fact is you're busy. So you're going to go back to work. It'll be Monday and you have this schedule. You're placing 2 crowns, then you jump over to the next room and you have to finish an endo, and then you have to place an implant, and then you're doing an extraction and bone graft. Then you have some fillings to do. You're starting a denture. You're taking impressions. And while all that is happening, you have to jump over and do 5 million hygiene checks. And now here I come, this jerk from Cleveland, and I'm like, oh, well, make sure to plan out your patient appreciation day, and don't forget, you need to start writing more handwritten notes. And oh, that patient over there, they're $15,000 or more. So you need to spy on that patient. And this guy needs a handwritten note. And it's raining outside. So make sure you walk that patient out with their car. And you have this already busy office. And now all of a sudden that guy's looking for the stationery for the handwritten notes. And that guy over there is like, dude, where's the umbrellas? I thought we ordered the umbrellas. And this guy over here is like, dude, wait, am I in charge of ordering the bouncy house for Patient Appreciation Day? You're going to go crazy. You're going to have a mutiny. Your employees are going to hate you. So let's follow a couple rules. Number 1 is when these great ideas jazz up your team and you have one team member who's like, hey, I love the idea about handwritten notes. What that team member is going to want to do is put the monkey on your shoulders and say, okay, boss, doc, you order the stationery, you give us templates to work off of, you figure it out, how we're going to mail it to different people. We'll write the handwritten notes, just like Gupta said in this lecture, but you do all the other crap. And then another employee is like, oh yeah, I love the idea of walking people out with the umbrella. So you buy the umbrellas, you talk about it at the morning huddle. It's your responsibility. And then there's you, the boss, who's already busy. Like, you already got a life, right? You're running a dental office, and then you have your kids and your mortgage and all that kind of stuff. You're busy. Take the monkey, put it back on the shoulders of your team. When a team member says, hey, let's do something cool for the office, you put the monkey back on their shoulders and say, hey, listen, I want you to think about how we're going to accomplish this, who's going to take charge of it, what amount of time do you need to properly implement it, what resources do you need from me. to properly implement this? Whose help will you need to enlist? And how will this new service affect our team, affect our patients? And you're expected to present this at a future team meeting. You're going to figure out how to make this work, and you present it to the rest of the team. You sell it to the rest of the team. I want to discourage any of you dentists who are listening to this lecture and you got jazzed up and you're like, I really want to start doing some of this stuff. I want to start doing handwritten notes and walking people out to their car, and we really should have a philanthropy day. No, instead of you being in charge, you take the monkey off of your back and you put it on the back of the person who is most jazzed up with the idea. And the reason this is important is because the best implementation, it doesn't come from the boss, it doesn't come from the dentist or the office manager. The best implementation comes from the person who's most passionate about a particular idea. And that might be your hygienist, or it might be your front desk team, or it might be your assistant. Put the monkey on their back. You will implement it better. The last thing is, instead of just coming up to your team and saying, hey, everyone, we really should start, instead, follow these rules. As a team, listen to this lecture and choose one thing. Just one. Preferably not the one that's too expensive or difficult to implement. I know, because I've done this lecture enough times, I know a bunch of you are jazzed up about the Veterans Day. I know you are. You're like, oh man, we got to do Veterans Day. Don't make that the first thing that you do. Don't. It's too much work. It's too hard. So choose one thing, preferably the one that's not too expensive or difficult to implement. Elect a point person for that project. Create a timeline and a deadline as a team for complete implementation. And then, if it's not fun, if you guys don't think it's going to be fun, then just don't even bother doing it. Okay? And then make it incentivized and structured and written. So if it is a particular item like handwritten notes, or walking patients to their car, or handing out Starbucks gift cards when people are late, choose that one item, create a goal, a reward, a competition for it, put it up on poster board, and monitor it every day. Okay? So you create a poster board, all the team members' names over the course of those weeks, and put little hash marks for whatever new program that you're going to be doing for your team. Okay? And the person who participates the most, get them a gift card. Buy them a $100 gift card to Target or some local mall or something like that. Make it fun. All right. I do want to let you all know that I am having my first ever CE retreat. It's going to be June 18th and 19th. It's going to be at the Deer Creek Lodge and Conference Center outside of Columbus, Ohio. I just secured a 5th speaker. I think a lot of you know her. It's Anissa Holmes from Delivering Wow. She'll be one of the speakers. I think a lot of you have probably met Carlos Rodriguez. He is the funny man of dentistry, dentistry's king of comedy. He'll be doing stand-up comedy. We have yoga instructors. We have life coaches and business coaches, Alan Stern and Laura Mock. I'll be doing several of CEs. And we're going to be doing a lot of outdoor, fun, exciting activities, drinking scotch or drinking wine around a fire pit, etc. It should be a CE event like nothing you've ever attended. And so I would love it if you considered learning more about it. You can look at the website, thehappydentistretreat.com. And then if you enjoyed today's presentation, the presentation that you just heard, I would really appreciate if you go on my Facebook page, and I'll show you where it is in the next slide, and write a little blurb about how I'm an enjoyable speaker to listen to. Because as a professional speaker, it's important for me to have some buzz in the dental industry. And so for you to write something nice about me on your Facebook page or on my Facebook page, it's something that I would really appreciate. Quotes that I can put on the website, videos that I can put on my website, or just quick quotes that I can steal and throw on my website. I would really appreciate those things because that really helps me as a professional speaker. Here's how you can follow me. I have an Instagram page, a Facebook page, and then of course there's my website and email address. For those of you who want to learn more about the philanthropy, about the Veterans Day, I've created a 30-minute Loom video that walks you through all the steps about implementing a Veterans Day event in your office. Just shoot me an email and I will provide that to you. I have provided Dr. Vo a handout for today's lecture. So all you have to do is download that handout. You can print it out and you can share it with your teams. And if there's any just specific questions that you have that you're like, yo, I could really use a little bit of help from you, Gupta, just shoot me an email. One thing that I promise is I respond to every email I get. It's not timely. I don't respond timely, but I do respond to every email I get. I hope you all enjoy this conference. I appreciate you, Dr. Vo, for having me be one of the speakers. Everyone take care.
Hi, I'm John with Simplastics. When you're dealing with medical emergencies, efficiency is key. But getting organized when you have an enormous amount of supplies can be overwhelming. That's why you need storage bins that are specially made to increase productivity, reduce inventory costs, and create extra workspace. Enter Simplastics. Convenient, durable, and effective. It's a game-changing dental inventory management system that your office can't afford not to have. Our pre-configured dental tip-out bin setups include mounting frames, allowing them to be installed above existing baseboards, keeping your entire setup off of the floor. With units in 2 feet wide increments, you can easily add more segments as the practice grows in size. Keep inventory centralized with clear visibility and easy access. With over 7,000 installations worldwide, Simplastics is the choice one-stop shop for storage solutions. Select one of Simplastics' pre-configured setups or customized to your practice needs. Say goodbye to running out of supplies, having expired products, or ordering too much. Improve on your existing storage and display. Run a smart practice. The solution is simple.